Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order and everyone is in attendance. So we will do the land acknowledgement. The municipality of Dysart acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, which includes Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Boswell, and Georgina First Nations. And we thank these nations for their care and stewardship over the lands as they pass through. Okay, and we can need a resolution to adopt the agenda, Mallory?
Okay, be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of council of the municipality of Dysart et al., held on June 25th, 2024, be approved as presented.
I have a mover and seconder. Nancy and Barry, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest?
On item 7C, a bylaw, appointment of a municipal bylaw officer. I, Nancy Wood Roberts, declare a potential pecuniary interest on the council or committee agenda described for the above following reason. The item is appointing my daughter as a municipal law enforcement officer.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I don't think it's much of a one, but it appears like it is because you're not really connected. Okay, so any other declarations? Being none, we'll have a resolution to adopt the minutes.
Okay, be it resolved that council approves the following meeting minutes as circulated. Regular meeting of council on May 28th and public meeting on May 28th.
Mover and seconder. Walt and Carm, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Anything from the county to report, Walt? There's a fairly lengthy IT report on the future of what municipalities can do to provide better services coming to county tomorrow, and it has an impact on all the lower tiers. So Dysart fortunately have a lot of these things already in place. We're well ahead of the other townships. So my CAO tells me that it's not the impact on us that financially that it would be on others. So we'll just have to watch that process as it unfolds. Okay. Next, we have the briefing from the auditor from Grant Thornton, Nathel, Nance, Tracy Stone, and I believe they're joining us by Zoom. And we do have a copy of the financial statement from Grant Thornton in our package, and I'm sure we've all had a good look at it, and Barb's on the blower as well. So I guess we could bring Grant Thornton's people in.
Hello.
Morning.
Thank you and for having us. My name is Nathaniel Tracy Stone. I'll be presenting the financial statement drafts, and we have Allison Frizzle.
Hi, everyone.
Morning.
So I'll just share my screen. Can I have the video up at the same time? Let me know if you can see the statements.
Yeah, we see them.
Perfect. So today we'll be presenting the drafts for the Corporation of the Municipality of Dysart as of December 31st, 2023. So we'll go down to the independent audit report. This is very consistent with the previous year. It's a clean audit opinion. No changes from prior year with that respect. So just quickly go through that. The consolidated statement of financial position, fairly consistent with prior year with some key items to highlight overall. So cash and cash equivalents are down from 9.8 million versus 8.9 million in the previous year. We'll see that breakdown in this in the cash flow statement soon. Taxes receivable are up from 1.16 million to 1.55 million from the current year. Accounts payable are up 3.4 million versus 2.3 million in the previous year. One thing to note is the asset retirement obligation. This is probably the most significant change from the previous years. You'll see in note 3 and note 11, but there were significant changes to the PSAS standards that impacted the 2023 fiscal year. The landfill that was previously recognized and adjusted in previous years under the contaminated site standard, as of January 1st, 2023, was required to be accounted for under PS 3280 asset retirement obligations. Now we'll see that in the note number 3, the change in accounting policy, note disclosure, to see what that impact truly was. But it was determined by management council that to account for this on a prospective basis with no prior period restatement. The adjustments in the current period have resulted in an overall increase in an asset retirement obligation. TCA recognized for the landfill itself, accretion expense and depreciation and the statement of operations. So that's a significant piece there. So tangible capital assets are also up from 3.9 million versus 3.4 in the previous year. So those are the significant pieces there. All else remains fairly consistent. And we'll touch upon some of the other ones. The consolidated statement of operations, overall fairly consistent. The 3 columns showing the budget, the approved budget, actual results, and the prior year actual results. The most significant decrease was in the environmental services expense, where it went from 5.6 million to 3.8 million in the previous year. Revenues were up 20 million versus the 19.5 million in the previous year, and well over budget of the 18.7 million. Additionally, expenses were down to 17.7 million versus the 18.9 million in the previous year, and well below the budget of 20.4 million. So an overall surplus 2.5 million in the current year versus 616,000 in the previous year, and much higher than the budget a budgeted deficit of 1.7 million there. So we'll go down to the statement of changes in net debt. This represents the impact of the annual surplus and other statement of operation line items. So the net debt of 2.2 million at year end versus 414K in the previous years. This was largely the result of the tangible capital asset acquisitions and the addition of the landfill asset, resulting in the related asset retirement obligation. So that's the main changes there. Overall, fairly consistent.
Just stop you there. How is that landfill? How is that calculated? That's just an estimate, right?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So it's a present value techniques. So we'll get into how that was calculated. It's depicted in note 3 and note 11 as well. So I can see. Right. Sorry, the consolidated statement of cash flows. This is the breakdown of cash from current year to from prior year. So the top items represent items that are not impacting cash. Overall, these are fairly consistent, with the exception of the accretion on the asset retirement obligation. And then we have the changes in non-operating working capital items, and these just represent the year-over-year changes of the balance sheet items, which we've already touched upon in the statement of financial position. So that's just the year-over-year change impacting there. The significant items in the investing and financing activities relate to the acquisition of the tangible capital assets. So there's a significant increase there of 5.1 million versus a 2.7 million in the previous year. And there was also less disposals in the previous year. So there was only 578K in proceeds versus 1.4 million in the previous year. Similarly, in the finance activities, we can see that debt repayments were higher than the previous year. So 1.9 million versus 518,000. And overall, we can see that the change in cash, 9.8 million in the previous year, the decrease to 8.9 million in the current year. There was also a land that was acquired in the fiscal year, and there was a mortgage assumed of 1.45 million. This is shown as a non-cash transaction at the bottom here for presentation purposes. It's also, we'll see in note 13, the breakdown of the municipal debt. So we'll move on to the note disclosures. Notes 1 and 2 are consistent with previous years. So this is just the nature of the entity and your significant accounting policies that are approved by council. So I won't touch on these. So there should be very limited changes to those. The big one that I was mentioning before was number 3, was the change in accounting policies. So as I mentioned earlier, there were significant changes with PSAS standards. This note provides a breakdown of those changes. And as noted, the most significant one, so let's go down here, sorry. The most significant one was related to the asset retirement obligations. And this was related to the landfill that has been, as noted here, it's been prospectively adjusted under the new asset retirement obligation standard. And so no prior period adjustment was required for that. But here we can see that there was an overall increase in the carrying amount for the landfill itself. So we'll see that in note 18 for the TCA breakdown. There was an increase in the obligations. So there's an asset retirement obligation. It's now presented as an asset retirement obligation versus a landfill liability. So there was an increase of that for 772,000. And then there was an overall decrease in environmental services expense of 307K as a result of that. So that's as of January 1st, 2023. And then we'll see in note 11 the breakdown of the accretion expense associated with the asset retirement obligation. Number 4, financial instruments, fairly consistent with the previous year. The instruments measured at amortized cost are cash, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and debt. And then there's the employee future benefits, which are measured at their value. There's overall minimal change year over year here. So 15.3 million amortized cost versus 15.6 million in the previous year, and fair value 397,000 versus 427,000 in the previous year. The risks also remain fairly consistent in that sense. So the trust funds, note number 5, this also remains fairly consistent. So these are trust funds for cemetery, 169,000 versus 164,000 in the previous year. No real change there. Note number 6 represents the taxation raised on behalf of others. So there's the school boards in the county of Haliburton, very consistent with the previous year. 14.6 million was raised in the current year versus 14.0 in the previous year. Note number 7 just represents the breakdown of restricted cash and cash equivalents. Again, very consistent, 1.12 versus 1.18 in the previous year, almost like very minimal change in that sense. Note number 8 represents the breakdown of cash and cash equivalents. Here we have the similar 9.8 million versus 8.9 million in the current year, as we saw on the statement of cash flows. And we can just see that there's unrestricted and designated cash that are fairly consistent with the previous year. Note number 9 is the accounts receivable breakdown. Again, extremely consistent, 778,000 versus 773,000 the previous year. Almost no change there. Note number 10 denotes the breakdown of the obligatory reserves. Again, very consistent. Net change is depicted in this table below here. Overall balances are fairly consistent, with the largest being a decrease in the federal and provincial gas tax obligatory reserve, and that's the result of 501,000 that was recognized as revenue. So overall reserves down from 1.4 million from 1.5 million in the previous year. Note number 11, as we discussed before, the ARO that was the significant change. Here we have the breakdown showing the accretion expense. So we have the balance as of January 1st, 2023, which was prospectively adjusted. So it started at 6.8 million. There was accretion expense of 121,000, and then the final balance as on the balance sheet or on the statement of financial position, we have 6.9 million there. And here we can say, as the one question, the liability was estimated using present value techniques and discounted back. So a rate of 2.3% was used to discount the asset retirement obligation. And that was based off the municipality's borrowing rate in 2023 there. Questions? Okay. Number 12, minimal change. This note just presents the pension and contributions that were made. The table below here shows the accrued benefit obligation and the unamortized actuarial gains. Again, very consistent with the previous year. It's actually a little bit lower, at 397,000 versus 427,000. All else remains fairly consistent overall. Note number 13 provides the breakdown of the municipal debt. We can see significant changes, mainly being the term facility that was at 1.68 million in the previous year has been fully paid off. And then there was the 1.45 million that was assumed mortgage that was converted to a term facility that was used for the purchase of the land that was acquired there. So overall, we have the future payment breakdown here, and all debt is expected to be paid by 2025. Note number 14, capital lease obligations. All the prior year capital lease obligations have been fully repaid in 2023, so there is no obligation outstanding. Note number 15 represents the retained earnings that have been allocated by council to specific reserves. So we can see here reserve set aside 37 million versus 34 million in the previous year, and there's a complete breakdown of the funds there. Note number 16 just represents the contingent liabilities, the ongoing legal suits that have not been recognized in the financial statements as they've been determined to be indeterminable at this time, and therefore there's no accrual for any contingent liability. Budgeted amounts, number 17, these are presented in the statement of operations and are approved by council, so I won't go deep into this piece. Number 18 is the breakdown of the tangible capital assets, and there's a comparison to the prior year. So we can see that overall cost 92 million, an accumulated amortization total of 53 million, and an overall net book value at the end of the year of 39.4 million. We can see here the adoption of PS 3280, which is the asset retirement obligation. This is where we see the landfill coming in here under the land improvements. So go down, and then this is just the previous year. We can see that the cost was 85 million, amortization was 50.9, and net book value was 34.9 million. So overall, TCAs have gone up. Number 19 is the segment information. This shows the breakdown of revenue and expenses directly attributable to each segment. So let's scroll down, and we can see the breakdown there. And we can see that general government had an annual surplus of 2.4 million, protection and persons and property deficit of 425,000, transportation services deficit of 664,000, environmental services a surplus of 1.3 million, health services a surplus of 69,000, recreational cultural services a deficit of 84,000, planning development deficit of 63,000, with an overall surplus of 2.5 million there. We can just quickly scroll down here, which was the comparatives for the prior year. And overall, we can see that there was a surplus of 616,000. So comparatively, it has gone up significantly. So that concludes the presentation on the consolidated financial statements for the municipality of Dysart. If there's any questions, I'll go on to the trust piece now. Is there anything on any questions?
Any questions from council?
Nope.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So here we have the financial statements for the corporation municipality, for the trust funds for the cemetery, and these are very consistent with the previous year, very high level on this one. Unqualified audit opinions with a clean audit opinion, same as last year. So scroll down. Breakdown, very consistent with the previous year. Total assets of 172,000 versus 164,000, and a small due to the municipality of 3,735. So very, very consistent with the statement of financial position and the statement of operations. Again, like revenues in excess of expenditures of 12.9K versus 9K in the previous year. Net assets being 169,000 versus 164,000 the previous year. The notes remain extremely consistent with no real changes. So there's that concludes the trust presentation. I don't know, Allison, did you want to take over the screen and we'll do the presentation of the report to those charged with governance?
Sure. Nathaniel, do you have that open? If so, you can just share that.
I think
if
I
you
do.
don't mind. You're a
Sorry.
little more tech savvy than I am, so I always forget to do the scrolling as I'm talking through it. Okay. So I'm going to take you through our audit strategy and results report. I'll go through kind of at a high level and just sort of highlight some of the significant things. And then if there's anything that you want to discuss in more detail, we can open it up for questions afterwards. So just on the first page, we have the executive summary. And here we're really just highlighting the status of our audit. So you can see here that there's a few outstanding items that we'll need in order to finalize. These are all standard things to have outstanding at this point in time. It's just getting the signed management representation letter, the approval of the consolidated statements by council, which happens here today, and then our procedures regarding subsequent events, which is really just inquiries of management. We have there as well the receipt of legal letter responses, but we do already have those back and there were no issues that arose from that. So then on the next page, we have our audit risks and results. So here we're highlighting what we've considered to be significant risks and our responses and findings as they relate to those risks. The first two risks here, we have fraud risk from revenue recognition and fraud risk from management override. So both of these are presumed fraud risks under the auditing standards. And what that means is that they're essentially going to be considered a significant risk in every single audit. So this isn't something that's specific to the municipality. I know sometimes people see fraud risks and they panic a little bit, but that's completely normal. And based on the audit work that we performed over those risks, there were no issues noted. So then on to the next page, we have one other significant risk this year, which is that asset retirement obligation liability that Nathaniel has already spoken about. The reason that we have that as a significant risk this year is really because it is a new standard, as well as the fact that there's quite a bit of estimation around that. So it did require a little extra work on our part and on management's part as well. Based on the work that we did perform, there were no issues noted, but as we mentioned, there was an adjustment related to the landfill liability. And then there was also an on-recorded misstatement related to some costs to remove asbestos in city-owned buildings, but we will touch on those a little bit later in the report. The next part under accounting practices, we're just highlighting the post-employment benefits here because that is a significant estimate. Again, throughout the work that we did, there were no issues noted with that. So then on the next page under other areas of focus, again, we're just required to communicate with you about fraud and illegal acts, just to let you know that we didn't detect any of that, which is great. But we do always like to highlight that a financial statement audit isn't meant specifically to identify fraud. So then moving on to the adjustments and on corrected misstatements, as we noted, there is an adjustment. The largest one here is related to the landfill liability. So because there was a change in the accounting standard around that, it does have to be accounted for a little differently. And as a result, there was an increase to the liability as well as an increase to tangible capital assets for that. The other three adjustments here are kind of just standard adjustments that I think are done every year just to kind of balance the financial statements and get those ready. So nothing unusual. On the next page, under the uncorrected misstatements, we do have the adjustment to record the asset retirement obligation related to asbestos, as I mentioned. So what the uncorrected misstatements are misstatements that aren't material to the audit. So they haven't been adjusted in the financial statements, and we're okay with that as auditors because the financial statements are still not materially misstated. But because they are over our trivial threshold, which is a much lower number, we do include them in this report. And how this amount is determined is basically just a present value technique on estimated cost for what it would cost to remediate those buildings. On the next page, under other reportable matters, we do note here that there's one internal control deficiency, and there is a letter in the appendices with a little more detail. But just to summarize, basically there's a segregation of duties issue because the treasurer does have the ability to post and create journal entries. We've noted that the process has changed, so she doesn't actually do that anymore, but we still include it in here just because the ability is there. And normally we would just recognize it or recommend that ability is taken out of the system. So then on the next page, under technical updates, we have here just noting that there are some new accounting and assurance standards included in the appendices. In terms of assurance standards, there's nothing significant coming that would really have any impact on our audit. In the accounting standards, there is one new standard coming out, which is a new revenue standard, and that will be effective for the next reporting year, so for the 2024 year end. This will take a little bit of work on management's part, so we do just want to put it on everyone's radar. Essentially what it is it's a new overarching revenue standard. So there's already revenue standards related to specific things like taxation and government transfers and all of that. This puts in place kind of an overarching standard to catch all of the rest of the types of revenue. And what will have to happen is management will have to put together kind of an analysis of what those other revenue types are, and then looking at the standard, just making sure that it's being applied properly and that revenue is being recognized properly. So it's something that should be started probably in the summertime or the fall, and we're happy obviously to discuss with you, Barb, and kind of give you some guidance as you go along through that standard. We do also have a dedicated financial reporting advisory group at Grant Thornton that is independent of the audit team, and they're able to perform that analysis for you as a separate engagement if that's something you're interested in, but we can always chat about that later. And so that's really all that I wanted to highlight in our report. The rest is just the appendices, which is nothing significant. So that is all for our presentation. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Any questions, anyone? Not your typical audit report that we see personally, but so what are you saying that your firm has the ability to review to see if we can be more efficient in some ways, not to take some of the work off our treasurer here who is overloaded, maybe different procedures? Is that what I'm hearing here?
So this would just really be for the implementation of that new revenue standard. We have sort of a specific group that can help our clients with implementing new standards as they come out, because as the audit team, we can't really do that because there's sort of a bit of an independence issue. We can help out, but we can't perform the analysis. So we do have sort of an independent team that can actually perform that analysis. Obviously, it would be a separate engagement and there would be a fee attached to that, but it is an option that we have.
There's a fee attached to everything, isn't there?
Always,
Yeah.
right?
We'll discuss that with our treasurer to see if there's maybe some advantage to having a look at all our procedures to see if we can take some of the work out of it. And
Absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned efficiency about processes and potentially doing like an audit on those. That is also a possibility. There's a group at Grant Thornton that does that piece as well. So we could get you in contact with that group if that was something the council is interested in.
Let council talk to the treasurer first and see what the value in it is, and then we'll get back to you
Definitely.
to get some appraisals, maybe some costs. Okay, that's a lot to digest, but it's not a lot different than last year. And the year ahead looks like we're going to we got some bridges to do and a major expansion at the landfills to make them more efficient. It's going to cost a lot of money. So I think we're going to have to take on some debt, whether we like it, I hate it, but there's no choice with the way costs are running. So I'm sure it'll be a different looking statement next year. So there's no questions from anyone? Okay, well, good. Thank you very much then. And we'll be getting the final report like next month, or this is a draft, right?
Yeah. I mean, we can turn that around pretty quickly once we get the signed management representation letter
Okay.
back in. So yeah, it doesn't take us too long to turn that around.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's been helpful. So I guess, Mallory, we have a resolution.
Yep, okay. Be it resolved that council accepts the 2023 audited financial statements from Grant Thornton LLP as presented.
Mover and seconder. Pat and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. Now, the next portion is a public meeting, and it's little bit painful time-wise, but we have to do it, so I guess we need a resolution to go into the public meeting.
Okay, be it resolved that council hereby adjourns the regular meeting of council at 9:31 a.m. to proceed into a public meeting to consider zoning bylaw amendment file D14-ZB 2024-007, lands of Hatton and Jorgensen.
Mover and seconder. Nancy and Tammy, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so public meeting. Good morning and welcome. The public meeting is June 25th, 2024. Will now come to order. A notice of all those in attendance that this meeting will be streamed on YouTube and recorded. Please note that the recording will be linked to the municipal website. The purpose of the public meeting is to present planning applications in a planning forum as required by the Planning Act. This is a public meeting to consider one proposed zoning amendment to the Dysart bylaw 2005-120. It is council's responsibility to consider all information received to date regarding the applications and to hear and consider any views you may have about these applications. Every person present or registered will have the opportunity to ask questions about the proposals and voice their opinion regarding same. When speaking, state your name and your relation to the application prior to speaking. Each person will have 5 minutes to provide comment or ask questions. Please direct all your questions and comments to the chair. Please restrict your comments to planning matters only. After this public meeting is over, council will make a recommendation as to whether or not the proposed zoning amendment should be passed. Council's recommendations will then be considered during the regular meeting of council. Once council has made a decision on the proposed amendment, notice will be circulated as per the Planning Act. All those persons who have given the municipality written notice that they would like to receive notice of the decision will receive a copy of the decision. You must make this request in writing to the municipality. The Planning Act specifies that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality before the proposed bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the municipality to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the appeal unless we, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Now we commence the public meeting part of the agenda. The first application is file number D14-ZB 2024-007, lands of Hatton and Jorgensen. The manager of planning will now give a brief overview of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment. If the applicant or agent is in attendance, do you wish to explain your proposal? Council will now have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff. If any member of council wishes to ask a question, please raise your hand. This meeting will be now open for public comments. So I guess, Jeff, are you doing this or is Chris?
No, I will be. So thank you for going through that that long-winded introduction. But this is for item 3A on the agenda. The purpose of the application is the owners of the property had submitted a zoning amendment application that would change the zoning of the subject property from rural type 1 zone and environmental protection zone to rural type 1 exception zone and environmental protection zone in order to do the following. Permit an additional dwelling unit to be located in the front yard. Permit a reduced street setback for the proposed garage from a municipal street, and further delineate the environmental protection zone boundary as defined by the supporting environmental memo and survey attached with the planning report. The proposed was also supported by an environmental brief and accompanying survey, which better defines the natural features of the property and ensures that that development will not negatively affect those features by implementing appropriate mitigations and setbacks. All neighboring property owners within 120 meters of the subject property were circulated in all agencies, and the advertisement or notification was placed in the local newspaper. To date, no comments have been received. And given the information outlined in the report, it is recommended that council approve the bylaw as provided. The applicant, I believe, is in attendance. Should council have any questions?
Okay, I have a question. The county floodplain mapping that was done, was that considered before or after the report? Or was it considered at all?
I believe it was before, well, it would have been done before this report and, but the mapping that's shown for the EP areas, that was done, I believe, by Ducks Unlimited, Jeff. You may be able to better clarify that than I can,
Oh, okay. Go
but
ahead.
Sorry if I may. So in terms of the wetland mapping or our environmental protection zone, so the wetland mapping done by the county was done by Ducks Unlimited. I can't put a date on that, unfortunately. But we can look into that for you if you like. Our EP zone came into effect in around 1990. There are some provincially significant wetlands located in the area as well, which is why we requested this environmental impact study, so that they had a biologist on site to accurately delineate that boundary. And just a question, if you don't mind, Mayor, are you asking about the most recent floodplain mapping that they were doing?
Yeah, and I know this study probably was done before that, but I'm just concerned when we're allowing some construction in the AP zone, that we're right, it's right and it's correct. And sometimes consultants do things and there's always a question mark, but I don't know, maybe the applicant will have a comment on this.
And if I may first, so we have not yet at the municipal level been provided access to that new floodplain
yeah.
mapping that was done for the Burnt River watershed, I believe. So I'm not sure it would cover this area anyways, but
Okay.
we do look forward to using that mapping. But we also do rely on the submission of the consultant's environmental study, which we do peer review if necessary.
Oh, so it has been peer reviewed, okay.
I don't think we peer reviewed it in this instance. It was both, we relied on their biologist and a surveyor to delineate that boundary.
that's correct. And I could further that, and they did provide mitigation measures, which was creating additional buffers. They did identify sort of a water feature, which they've included some additional buffering around. So have included some mitigation measures to ensure that development doesn't go into an area that is identified as like the wetland environmental protection area.
Okay. So is there any comment from their planner or?
Hi, my name is Laura Stone. I'm the planner for Holly Hatton and Steve Jorgensen. I would like to just, before I kind of get into this, comment that the buffers were taken into consideration by Riverstone Environmental Solutions to have any development setback even further from wetland features or flooding features. So the flooding, the environmental constraint area was delineated and then a buffer was applied to that. That would be appropriate for any development based on things like topography, vegetation changes, that type of thing. So quite a bit of work and thought was put into where these buffers would be located in order to mitigate or eliminate any negative impact on the environmental protection area. I just wanted to also thank staff for their supportive report. As the report notes, we are asking for the environmental protection zone to be delineated as determined by Riverstone Environmental Solutions. Additionally proposed are some minor deficiencies for the garage and the location of the accessory dwelling unit. My report that was submitted with the application outlines the conformity with the provincial policy statement and the official plan. The uses are consistent with the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the municipality, and this application is representative of good planning. So I am available to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay. Tammy, do you have any questions?
All looks fine there because that is. So.
Oh, Tammy, we can't hear you. There's a mic off.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, all of that looks fine as it is what is drawn there because there is a hill there. And, there's nothing, there's no problem with it.
Okay.
I don't see any problem with it.
Any other comments from council? Okay, is there anyone else who has a comment that's in the public? Okay. Okay, so it's been recommended by staff. So there's no other questions, so this concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. Any further questions from council? I have to ask one more time. If not, this concludes the public meeting for file D14 ZB 2024-007, lands of Hatton and Jorgensen. Okay, so we have.
I'll read the resolution. Does that work?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Be it resolved that the report for file number D14-ZB 2024-007, Hatton and Jorgensen, which consists of part lot 23 and 24, concession 9, parts 2 and 3, plan 19R-7388 in the geographic township of Harcourt, municipality of Dysart et al. Be received for information. And that council directs a bylaw to be brought forward for consideration during its June 25th, 2024 regular meeting, and that council recommends that the bylaw be approved.
Okay, mover and seconder, McKechnie and Tammy, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, resolution to go back to the regular meeting.
Be it resolved that council hereby adjourns the public meeting at 9:43 a.m. and reconvenes the regular meeting of council.
A mover and seconder. Councillor Barry and Carm. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, general delegations. Is Wendy speaking or who's speaking for the next delegation?
I'm speaking. We have 3 speakers. I think obviously we have 10 minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, and you're right up here. You just need to press the thing there, the button when you're speaking.
All right. So thank you for your time. Council members. My name is Lance Payne. I'm here on behalf of the LKO to discuss responsible wake issues for Cache Lake. So as we've learned from the bylaw review, there are a number of properties on Cache Lake that have permitted use for recreational camp under the tourism commercial CT zoning. So currently there is one camp that is running 2 wake boats continuously for 6 hours a day, each weekday in July and in August in certain sections on the lake. And this is not allowing property owners to have engage in safe water-related activities or in a fair and equitable manner. And there are also concerns about ecological damage in the future. So this is an example of an issue now that we like to consider, but it also speaks to what we need to look at for future in relation to putting into place some specific regulations or regulatory solutions to address future issues or camps that might develop similarly. So as I outlined in the brief, in the Transport Canada small vessel regulations, there is a requirement for reasonable use and consideration of others by all vessel users. So this is not the case. Cache Lake is a narrow lake and narrow and winding, and most bays are a half a kilometer in length or less. And what is happening because of the enhanced wakes from these wake boats is that even if the boats travel down the middle of the lake, as they say they do, the wakes do not dissipate. And because there are 2 boats, there's also enhancement because they're operating in a confined area. So this is, as I said, causing issues that residents can't reasonably use the lake for the times that the camp is operating. And as I mentioned again in the brief, the objective is not to remove wake boats from this lake. It's to look at a more equitable use in sharing the waters. And we're next going to have Dr. James here speak further to the science and some of the effects. And Dave Tranter will speak to the some of the resident concerns, and then I'll come back and talk to some of the regulatory options.
Hi, everyone. My name is Timothy James. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about this really important issue in support of the LKO. So I've prepared a short statement today about the impacts of enhanced wake and wash on lake ecology and on overall health in general. From my perspective as a scientist who works in conservation. Not that long ago, there wasn't really much in the scientific literature about this subject. And understandably, as a kid at my cottage, when I could never have imagined that there would be boats big enough and powerful enough that you could actually surf behind them, but here we are. Fortunately, the research has now had a chance to catch up, and without question, it has provided evidence to support the multitude of citizen observations of shoreline damage, changes to lake ecology and water quality, on top of some pretty significant safety concerns. Please be clear that what's happening here is pretty simple. We are introducing fairly suddenly a new and significant physical stressor to our lake system. And this is unprecedented in its many thousands of years of history. While some big lakes might occasionally experience large waves and turbulence during the biggest storms, I'm sure you'll agree that most lakes in Haliburton County, for example, do not. When you add a new stressor like this to a system, the system responds unavoidably. And it's this response that's the cause of alarm. Our lakes are pristine, or they used to be anyway, but they are still beautiful. And of course, this is largely because of the unique clarity and quality of our water. And this is in part the result of a very delicate balance of nutrients in the water column. I say delicate balance purposefully because most of our lakes are considered limited systems. This means that they are missing a few key elements that prevent uncontrolled growth of things like algae and weeds. For example, a key element that is typical in very short supply in our lakes that you may have heard of before is phosphorus. To put this in perspective, if you add 1 pound of phosphorus to a phosphorus limited lake, it can produce 500 pounds of algae, a 1 to 500 ratio. So we must at all costs keep the nutrient balance of our lakes in check. And of course, we're doing pretty well at that in Haliburton. We're dealing with our septic systems and we're making strides to protect our shorelines. Unfortunately, one of the best ways to introduce unwanted nutrients like phosphorus into the water column is by eroding our shorelines and stirring up bottom sediments. Yes, this can happen naturally as well, and smaller boat wake and wash can contribute, but it's important to understand that the relationship between wave size and its power is exponential. A small increase in wave size means a really big increase in what it can erode, and the power of these enhanced wakes are up to 17 times higher. We could talk more about the impact of these changes on fish and other wildlife, and also about the heightened risk of introducing invasive species via the ballast tanks that these boats use, but we'll have to leave that for now for time purposes. Some might argue, and you will hear this, that the risks I've described to you here are blown out of proportion, but I can assure you this is not the case. This is known science. We understand a lot of these processes. The science is fairly clear, and while there is still a lot to learn, the outcomes of unregulated enhanced wake activities is certain. What remains to be determined is whether we'll prioritize the short-term benefits of few at the expense of current and future generations, or whether we will choose to enjoy our lakes responsibly and sustainably in a way that for the long-term benefit of everyone. I'm happy to give you more information digitally if you want to read more about this issue. That's all for me. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. My name's Dave Tranter, and I represent people of Silver Beach, which is a community on Kashawagamog, and we are in direct affected by these boats. So the boats go back and forth in front of our docks. So you have 2 wake boats to Silver Beach as well. Is that right? We're not against wake boats. No, I we're just against how that they're operating on the lake. We have 1 big boat. 1? Okay. And he's a cottager. He doesn't live up here, so he's here. Right. not very often. We're a community of 59 homes, and we have 3 permitted 100-foot docks that are floating. And the first of those docks was installed in 2008. Throughout July and August, the hockey wakeboard school runs 2 boats back and forth from 9 to 4 a.m. During these hours, Silver Beach residents, who are mostly retired, cannot safely access their boats or use kayaks or canoes due to the waves created. It's very dangerous and has resulted in one case, one of our residents fell between the boat and the dock trying to get to their boat. I have been involved. I was on the board of directors for Silver Beach for up until last August. And we've spent over $50,000 in repair to the dock system. Some of them are this kind of thing that's happening. So this is a connector that holds our docks together. We had never replaced one of these breaking in this manner until the hockey school opened up. So we had to replace 5 of these last year. They're $150 each. Probably this year they're $300. Who knows what the price of things will be. We are really concerned. We had a meeting on June 4th with Troy Binney, the owner of the Wake School, with his son Mitchell. And we were told directly that they have no intention of changing their wakeboard scheduling or frequency. They seem not to care how their activities affect their neighbors or the environmental impact they make. To him, and he plainly spoke it, he said, they need to make money. So that's the bottom line. I'm here to get your support, the council support, in coming up with a reasonable solution to this, because it has to stop. Troy Binney indicated that he had already had incidents with other residents on the lake harassing their boats. OPP was called. My question to him was, I wonder why? Because if you go out onto our docks and all the other floating docks, you cannot use them. And that's coming up in about 7 days. We're going to start this process again when the school opens. And here we go again. So this is year 3. Thank you. Thank you. What's your time here?
So in the brief, what we did was we looked at some regulatory options, and I'll just go through them briefly. I guess the one I want to speak to more closely was the VORR. And so we talked about the zoning bylaw amendment and making revisions to the zoning provisions under the permitted use of recreational camps. There is, as I understand from discussion from staff and others, potential on a business license to introduce conditions. There is the potential to consider a nuisance bylaw. This is in place in many other jurisdictions that looks, and you have the authority under the Municipal Act to put that in place for situations on safety and health. The VOR, or the this is something that a local authority, such as a municipality, would apply to Transport Canada for. There is a submission that is required. I've outlined the steps there. I think there was some questions that came up, do VORs only apply to small lakes? That's not true. The listing of where there are restrictions for wake surfing today as a result of a VOR captured in 7.1. So there are about 68, and it's on the activity. It's on the wake surfing or the wakeboarding activity. It's not on the boat. So using a boat to travel across the lake and so forth without doing that activity would not be impacted by the VOR. I attached a copy in relation to enforcement. We're fortunate that there was a VOR that was done in Huntsville last year, and they provided all of the information and processes of how to do it, and they're quite happy to share that with Dysart and to move forward as would be appropriate. But as far as enforcement, they use a a complaint-driven process where the OPP is using video collected evidence to move forward. So the OPP are not on the lake 24/7. We've had contact with the Minden Marine officers here as well. They said that they use video evidence for many situations, and they were looking at this letters as well and would take it under consideration. So those are the options. I'm not sure if question period now, so I can open it up to what questions council may have.
Any questions?
Just a quick one now. I'm not that familiar with VOR, but so can that be placed on one individual lake in the municipality, or does it blanket the whole?
So the VOR, yes, you apply for a lake, but you can apply even for a section on the lake, or you can apply for the whole lake. So if you want it contained to sections, it can be contained to sections or it can be the whole lake. I can pass around this from the VOR schedule, and you can see there are various ones that use the section portion. They use different times that they're restricted and so forth. So it's not a full blanket for 24/7. It's whatever is decided upon as far as the submission to Transport Canada. Yeah.
Councillor.
Yes, this is strictly my opinion on this issue right now, and of course, we'll make a decision as a council, but first of all, I think that instead of jumping into VOR right away, I think that we should, like other lakes, I've been consulting with some other lakes, and they're doing an education and communication program right from trying to tell people how to drive boats. Every boat creates a wake. And I know wakeboarding boats create large wakes when they're doing that surfing especially. But I think that a lot of these people who are driving the boats also don't realize that if you don't plane them out quickly, they create a very, very large wake. I think that if you made I'd like to see us this summer started, because we still have time, to communicate to all the lake associations, all lakes, and the waterfront people, like some of the lake associations are doing right now. And to really let the people know about the respect they should have for our lakes and our shorelines, our neighbors, especially in the spring, the wildlife, all the loons and other birds nesting on the shores. I'm totally aware of the stress that these boats have on lakes, whether it's Kashag or Eagle or Moose where I live. But the horses left the barn, folks. What would happen if everybody who owned a cottage up here wanted to buy a wakeboarding boat? Can we stop them? Like, these boats are this is what the generation has gone to. And I think it's really something that's going to be really hard to control in the future, other than if we don't get the people to learn how to drive them properly and have the respect for their neighbors and the neighbors' docks and the shorelines. Dysart is really aware of the erosion problem. I walked in front of Silver Beach last fall with Director of Public Works, and we're hoping this fall to be able to do something and like take a hard look at how we're going to stop that erosion. In regard to the hockey school, I have just recently been talking to the owners, and I asked them if they would do some compromising this year, and they said that they would. They said they would really try to turn down the music. And they also said that they'll take one of their boats to the big part of the lake a few days of the week this year. I think that that's a way that we should approach this, is try to communicate with them on a regular basis. I know that I'll be following up on that. But I think that just telling them that they can't do it. In the future, we have other resorts that want to create these type of schools. Sure, we're gonna have to take a hard look at it. I totally understand that. But right now, I think just bringing in VOR is not the right answer. We, like, so many of these people up here that they have these boats because they can. And there's no rule that says you can't have a wakeboarding boat. Maybe you can't have one on Glen Lake, but on, like, there's 22 miles of waterway there in the Kashag chain. So I definitely feel for all the people that what's going on, but it's going on all the lakes. I just really do believe that we should educate and communicate with the people and try to make that work. So thanks very much.
So to make it clear, the compromise is, from the hockey school, is that they'll have one boat operating on Little Kashag, one operating on Big Kashag, so there won't be two anymore, and they'll turn the sound down. Is that's what we're being told?
Yeah, like starting this year, I don't know whether it'll be every day, but they said a few days. So
Yeah.
I said, is that 3 days? You said probably. And I'd like to see us work with them next year, trying to move the whole operation for that time period, like in July and August. But I'm very aware of that he's, adamant that he's going to do it his way, but I think that bringing VOR in is not setting the proper precedent right now.
Okay. You have a
couple
couple
issues.
comment?
Yeah. So as far as the education, we are totally on side with that. And we've had a pamphlet that's been developed for 2 years with support from the local marinas. And that's given out by the marinas to boat owners and to renters and so forth. So we are certainly trying to do that. As Deputy Mayor mentioned, again, it's not an issue to try to take the boats off or restrict the ownership in any way. The issue is this continuousness of a program that runs and that other residents cannot use their property in accordance. So we're quite happy if anyone wants to, we have videos. If you want to come stand on our docks, stand on Silver Beach docks and so forth, you can see what the effect is of one boat, and it's complicated by two boats. So this is the issue that, we have no idea when if this proposal went into effect, when the boat would be there. So how are we to make a determination when I can go swimming? Right now it's go swimming at high noon, which is definitely not the time to go when they go in for lunch and, go out paddle boating and so forth. So I appreciate that there's consideration, but, we do not have periods where we can reasonably use the lake in the same way that it's supposed to be shared according to Transport Canada.
Well, certainly an issue. I know I was on that lake from 1990, and there was no wakeboards, but I had to put stone along the shoreline because people just with an outboard didn't know how to drive the boat. So waves were coming 3 feet high, and I couldn't stand on the dock. And I know now it's compounded for sure. I hear you, but so
Periodic, if they come out periodically, correct? I mean, that's not happening every hour.
it's you'll never completely stop that.
Can I just make a really brief comment? I know that we want to try and solve problems like this by treating the symptoms. We have erosion, we need to protect our shorelines and stop the erosion, and building artificial shorelines we know is not the way to protect our lakes. It solves the erosion problem over a short space, but it is a catastrophe for our lakes to have artificial shorelines. We know this. This has been known for a really long time. Having the only way to solve it is to remove the energy from the lake system. That's the only way to do it. Not completely, but when you have waves that are so much larger than the natural waves on a lake, what do you expect to happen? This is how it goes. I know it's a difficult problem, but there's never ever been a good argument for doing something that's horrible for most of us just because people are already doing it. That's my take.
Okay.
Like I say, what happens if everybody buys a wakeboarding boat? Like what happens if everybody buys a wakeboarding boat on our lakes? Are we gonna stop that? It's a federal issue.
I don't think everybody can afford them.
And we all can't go back to canoes either on the same note. And, we still in Birch Point Lodge, right down the lake, right across the lake from Silver Beach, and I can remember you losing 4 feet of point a year until we put a bunch of stone around it. The rock bass lived in it and did its thing. But on the same note, I'm with Walt here in terms of education, maybe number 2, but also working with that camp. If the camp seems to be the pinnacle of the problem, then we deal with them directly in terms of trying to make it that way. And if they carry on in the next year, not abiding by their compromise, then to me, then we step it up on that note, because again, we're trying to make it workable for everybody on that note.
Well, certainly if the 2 boats reduces to 1, it's going to make some difference.
Well, it's going to change the noise and the thing in different lakes, but we never, as I said, we have no idea when that will happen. And secondarily, the long-term ecological system is going to be implicated. It doesn't, if it's a continuous situation. So that's the problem, right? Again, we understand people have boats and they go out periodically and so forth. That's not the issue. The issue is just this running July, August from 9 to 4, which are the prime time for people to use the lake, the others to use the lake.
Yes.
Just
Steve?
quick comment. It took us, I'm the president of the Lake Kashagawigmog organization. It took us 2 years to get Troy Binney to a table, which happened finally on the 4th of June. It took multiple letters. He said that, yes, he did receive, when I asked him, did you receive this letter on August 22nd of 2022? And he said, yeah, I took it to our lawyers at Stikeman Elliott. And the lawyer said, we don't need to respond. So they never communicated with us. Finally, when they came to this meeting, his suggestion for changing things was not to have 2 boats.
On the same.
Well, what he said was that he would move the wake surfing portion, which creates even larger waves, to Fridays on the big part of the lake. He would continue with his 2 boats in the stretch opposite Silver Beach. That was his compromise. The music issue, he said, we don't start the music until 11 a.m. and then it goes full blast at 11 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. That's his compromise. That's not a compromise as far as the Lake
That's not what
Association is
he's talking
concerned.
about.
That's what Troy told us, and that
Okay,
was June the
yeah.
4th. So I'm not, he's spoken to him since, but he
Yeah,
has
yeah.
not communicated that to us.
Well, he's been talking to him yesterday.
It would be nice to have some communication with the Lake Association. We're trying, it's all one-sided right now. We're not getting anything from him other than that one meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Okay, so any other
Did you
questions?
run the boats both Saturday and Sunday too?
No,
Just to do it.
no, 9 to 4, Monday to Friday.
So I got a quick question. You said you just called the police and the police were on it and seen them. Was there any charges laid? So was there?
No, we are doing the same point. The point was we were advised to make complaints to the Minden, and that's what they're going to open a file in relation to us. So we told, at our AGM, we said, this is the process, how you lay complaints. He said that he did not lay any charges, and I don't know whether or when or how that occurred. He just said people were coming out and concerned, and there was some discourse between the boat and what was happening, and that's what he said was a concern to him. So
So at this point, he's never been charged with anything when the police were there, to your knowledge?
him directly?
Yeah.
No, because there are no.
Okay.
Okay, Nancy.
Well, I was on the lake last summer and it is very noisy, and there are certainly lots of times that you can't be out in the water, especially with children. Being that, LKO is a lake at capacity, it's supposed to be a lake trout lake. There's a lot of loons and wildlife and stuff. So I think, the wake is a big issue. And again, we can't mandate what people do in their private watercraft. But what I would like to do is have some sort of documented agreement with Hockey Haven so that everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what the guidelines or the standards or the promises are. And I would also like to just investigate the board to see, what is the cost implication and what all it entails. Whether that means we speak to, getting a legal opinion about it, but just so that we have that foot in a shoe and ready to go if that becomes necessary. if we can't reach agreements, documented agreements otherwise.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Lance there? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Want me to read the resolution to acknowledge receipt?
all right.
Yeah. Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the delegation from members of the Lake Cache-Wiggamog organization detailing concerns with a camp wakeboarding program on Lake Cache.
Okay, so that's just received for information, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we would pursue getting something in writing from Troy then, is that fair? Yeah, so we know what exactly is happening, and so does the Lake Association with, and them copied it. Is that a good place to start and see where we are? And then we can get more information on Boar, and work with the OPP, because unless they're prepared to enforce it, unless they've got the staff, which they think they might not have, that's going to be another issue. But it wouldn't kick in this year anyway, it'd be next year, right?
Yeah, the application has to be made by August 15th of a given year. And as I said, the way that it's worked with many other municipalities, that is, they are not on the list.
No.
We'll take the video evidence.
Okay.
Excuse me, did you say August 15th? It had to be, had to be applied for?
So every year you have to apply for it by August 15th, and then basically it takes 6 months to be put into the schedule at Transport Canada. So it would be the next year.
Okay. So,
You have to go through the consultation process, those steps that I outlined in the brief there. You have to notify Transport Canada in March that you're doing it, and then you have to get your consultation.
Okay, you've heard the resolution, mover and seconder. Carmen, Barry, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Thank you, folks. Okay, next we have Dan Manley with a presentation.
Sure thing. Do you want me to?
Yeah, sure.
Beth is also here, Vice President.
Mallory, did you get my email this morning?
Yeah, we did. I think we have the most recent one up here, so, and I updated the agenda as well.
Okay, sure thing.
Yeah.
We also have, for more information, we have some handouts, if you'd like. Beth has some talking points that we can hand out to everybody for looking at later on. Sure. After or now or after? Okay. Excuse me. All right, so good morning. Thanks very much for having us back, and this time in open session. And thanks very much for the resolution from the closed session last time. So you were asking for a presentation on our project timelines, or at least a rough draft to understand what how long it would take for us to get started or get done what we're trying to do. So we prepared a really rough draft, but we might as well go ahead. So next slide, please. So assuming this is before I understood from Mallory about the process for the land transfer. So I put in Q3 as a start, which might not necessarily happen depending on how long it takes for land to transfer and all the process to happen that Dysart needs to go through. But assuming we would do this, get started in Q3, What we would do is revisit the fundraising study that we'd done with the Dennis Group. And what they had done is essentially done some interviews with a lot of key people around movers and shakers and some surveys, public surveys to find out about the affinity for fundraising for the project. They would essentially revisit now that we've followed some of the recommendations that came out of the previous round. And that included exploring partnerships and then finding out if we can get some land. So this would be a huge game changer for us. And we would want to revisit some key people and say, well, essentially, what do you think of us now? And reassess the fundraising potential for the project. And next is essentially same thing, getting the funding landscape on public, i.e. government, and private and corporate funding, just to see how that's changed since 2 years ago. A lot can change since, like 2 years ago, we were basically in the really close aftermath of COVID, and the fundraising landscape and the funding landscape has changed quite a bit since then. We would engage some consultants to start the rezoning application and begin some of the studies that are needed to get the rezoning done. And we would establish a building committee, which would be our liaison for some items in a following slide. So essentially, some people, both in our board and also outside of our board, perhaps people who are experienced in the building the college and help us along with interfacing with architects and consultants. Next slide, please. So in Q4, there'd be a fundraising campaign start. So we would develop then the capital campaign based out of the retouch on the fundraising feasibility study. We'd establish a fundraising target that's realistic. If some of you have seen our feasibility study, there was a $48 million price tag attached to what was spec'd out in that report. So we have to see if that is possible. If that's not possible, then what number could be reasonable and go for that target instead. We would establish a fundraising cabinet. So that'd be part of our board and some leadership, people involved in leadership in the community that would help us really kickstart and move the campaign forward. And then we'd begin the quiet phase of fundraising. So not a big splash, but approach people who know people who know people, and try to see if we can establish some big donors or some leadership donations early on in the campaign. Next slide, please. Also in Q4, with the project start, we would be updating the building program and confirm that the budget matches the fundraising target. So if we come back and they say that we can probably fundraise, say, 35 million, we would then go to the architects and say, what can you build us for $35 million? So they'll try to, as best they can, to reach the spec that's part of our feasibility study, maybe trim off certain building materials or maybe some bells and whistles that don't need to be there. But we might have to trim maybe some of the project, and we'll see how that works out. That's part of our building committee to work with the consultants on that. We would begin public consultations and continue the rezoning studies to get that process moving forward. And we would also retain a project manager, somebody who's been experienced in building art centers and it can help us through, be our representative with council, with consultants, with construction firms and architects, and help us through that process. And we would also then retain an architecture and consulting team that would help us redream or reset the center as per the latest budget. Next slide, please. Looking more broadly then to 2025, we'd work to finalize the design with the architecture team, produce all kinds of renderings and architecture documents, submit a site plan application to the municipality, and launch probably later in 25, launch the public campaign to great fanfare. Next slide, please. And then 2026 and beyond, we continue the public capital campaign. It's likely based on research we've done that would probably last 2 to 5 years, unless there are some big donors that come forward and let us cut it short, but it's likely to go, 2 to 5 years. We complete all the construction documents and get approvals for all those from the municipality. Finally, also entering the tendering process. And then what we want to target for Q4 2029, 5 years, is award the contract and break ground. So that is what we're hoping to work towards. And anything can happen, of course. So I understand that we would want to work out potentially a deal where if we're not able to make moves on the property, or if heaven forbid the project goes south, the property would revert back to ownership with Dysart. So I hope something of a 5-year plan with reasonable, you know, if there are some reasonable issues going on, that we can work those out, but a 5-year plan would be reasonable for the municipality.
That's a good presentation. Any questions? I think 5 years is what we were thinking of.
Okay, yeah, it's a nice, well, round number, so to say.
Well, I think you'd know by then what your costs are.
Yeah, yeah.
and whether you can do it or what you're gonna do.
Yeah, exactly. With you know, all the sort of practical logistic things will happen sooner. The biggest thing is the capital campaign for the 2 to 5 years. And we'd be in constant communication of what's going on, if there are any changes. And if there's any reasonable delay, or we're just close and then there's a technicality, I'm sure we could work it out. But otherwise, yeah, if it looks like after 5 years, this is not going to work, then yeah, then I'll have to find a new job somewhere else.
Don't want to have to all that work. do you?
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Dan? I think that's, so we'd,
Beth, is there anything you think I might have missed? Okay.
well, I think it's pretty clear what we need to do, so we've agreed to give you the lot, give you the property.
Well,
and,
thank you.
Based on the fact
Yes.
that you do it or you don't, and if you can't do it,
Right.
it'll come back to us.
Some of the in the email that Mallory sent, there's a mention, a line in there about that we would cover all the costs for the
For the zoning and.
yeah, is there any given that where the town might also help with some of the zoning
Well,
fees?
we'll discuss that.
Okay.
We'll be starting that this year, right?
But yeah, essentially as soon as possible, yeah.
Okay.
And I had give me a question, a second here, I had another question I had here. Also Mallory mentioned the land transfer, of the process that would go on for this, so there's a few formalities that have to happen, right?
Yeah, there are. Yeah,
Okay.
there's land transfer tax, but there won't be any if it's a dollar sale.
Oh, no, I see. I mean, there was a process by having to declare the land
Yeah,
surplus.
Yeah.
I have a resolution. I can start reading. It has a lot of detail like that in it. And then we can decide if we like the wording, if you guys like. So we will be declaring the land surplus in this resolution, so that part will be taken care of. For good record keeping and just letting the public know that public land's being sold. When we're actually passing the bylaw, just to confirm the sale of land, just so future generations know it was sold, we advertise that the land's being sold usually and let people know that this is being sold. So that happens at a later process. It's after we get signed off on the agreements, basically, to transfer the land. Does everyone want me to start reading the resolution? Is that helpful or?
Yeah, we might as well, and then we can discuss that if we need to.
Okay, so be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the delegation from Dan Manley from the Halberton Highlands Arts Center Foundation, requesting that council consider the possibility of selling or donating the municipally owned parcel legally described as part of lots 6 and 7, concession 8, in the geographic township of Dysart on Wonderland Road for a new performing arts center. And further that these lands are declared surplus and that council agrees to donate the land on the condition that construction of the initial phase be started within 5 years. These terms shall be outlined in an agreement that will be prepared and executed with the assistance of the municipal solicitor at the cost of the Halberton Highlands Arts Center Foundation. And then it says all costs related to potential land transfer and development approvals shall be the responsibility of the foundation. That's the way the resolution currently reads based off previous discussions, but let me know if you want anything changed in it.
So you'd be using the same lawyer that we would then.
Yes, that would be part of this condition. All the fees, I mean, the fees certainly aren't cheap. Putting them all together with all the studies. If some can be waived or we can defer that sentence to a later time, that would be ideal.
We could put the sentence as all costs related to the land transfer shall be the responsibility of the foundation, because I think that's fair. Well, sorry, that's not my opinion to say, but the land's being donated, so so the council would be asking in that case that they're not paying to donate the land. But I know what you mean by, like, we can remove the development approval section if that's what council wants to do.
Mallory, is that something we have to do now, or can we revisit that after the study's been done and the budget's been set and funds are raised and stuff, like maybe year 3 or something?
Yeah, you absolutely could. So I could just remove it from this part of the resolution. So it would be an understanding that someone who's putting in a development application pays for it. So then the foundation will be billed, well, they'll be told to pay for it. They could come at a later date and ask for relief. So that's the option. I can take it out of this, the development approval part of the resolution. I can take it out of it if that's what council wishes.
I think we could do that, but the new council might not think the way we think, and yeah, and put it back.
Well, either way, the foundation has to ask to have fees waived, so they would be given fees that they're expected to pay, and then they would come and ask. So you can either make it clear right now that you're not waiving fees and no future council's waiving fees, but you know, they could still ask. Or you can just leave it out and then just they can come later and ask for a waiver.
We suspect that we'll be doing this rezoning because if we can't rezone, the property won't be usable, and we don't want to go through. I mean, all signs point to that it could or that it will be, but we don't want to get 3 years down this process and figure out we can't use it. We would like to start all these studies right away, so we would expect that it would all be during this council's lifetime.
But rezoning isn't that big an issue, is it? Cost-wise?
There's the application fee for it. There's the commercial per square meter fee. There's a number of fees that come out of that.
Oh, it's considered commercial.
Yeah, and then there's a holding fee to remove the holding on it. Trying to think of Jeff, maybe you can help with all the fees that were. I don't have the paper in front of me exactly. Well, actually, I would on my laptop.
Yeah, there's a couple approvals required if this development reaches its full potential. The zoning bylaw amendment being the primary application, but it's also subject to site plan control, as Dan mentioned, lifting holding provisions, as well as a responsibility agreement if the residential portion goes through.
Oh, because you're putting residential portion as well.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Huh.
The fees, I think we estimated the fees without the studies themselves came to nearly 17,000.
Well,
so we could leave this resolution was written based on previous discussions with council, but it could just say all costs related to the land transfer shall be the responsibility of the foundation, and just leave it at that. The foundation would automatically pay for development approvals, but they can come and ask, and council can discuss at a later date when they have a better idea of what it's costing them and what their budget is, if council wants to do it that way.
So there'd be a forgiveness afterwards.
yeah,
Potentially, yeah, like depending on, yeah.
I think if everything goes well, and you know, should be there. Are you good with that? Can you do that?
I'm good with that. Yes.
Do you want me to reread the second part of the resolution, just so it's clear again?
Yeah.
So,
Go through.
okay, and further that these lands are declared surplus and that council agrees to donate the land on the condition that the construction of the initial phase be started within 5 years. These terms shall be outlined in an agreement that will be prepared and executed with the assistance of the municipal solicitor at the cost of the Haliburton Highlands Arts Center Foundation. All costs related to the land transfer shall be the responsibility of the foundation.
And hopefully you can get a deal from the legal there.
That'd be wonderful too. Yes. I mean, you know, as a charitable organization, yeah, we completely rely on donations, and so it's versus a commercial venture that would be making profits from this. I mean, we're amazingly thankful for the property gift. I mean, that's absolute game changer, complete game changer for us, and really fires a starting pistol for it.
Good. Good. So are you good with that resolution then?
We're good with that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so you've heard the resolution. I mover and seconder. Barry and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Good. Thank you, Dan.
Well, no, thank you very, very much, very much. This has been, yeah, a couple months in the making. I don't have to make monthly visits then again. All right.
We're not all as terrible as we read about.
What?
sometimes.
What? All right. Okay. Thanks again. See you soon.
Yep. Okay. Okay, next is Jeff.
Yes, thank you. So this next item is a returning file. At the council meeting in May, council directed the Parks and Recreation Department to review an existing public access point located on Blue Hawk Lake, which is also located on a subject road allowance that the applicants are requesting to purchase. Council asked the Parks and Recreation Department to provide comments and recommendations for the preservation of that access point. The Director of Parks and Rec has since visited the site and notes that the trail and boats stored at that access point appear to be located on our road allowance. In his opinion, the purchase of the road allowance will not interfere with the access point. So based on those comments, the request complies with the direction provided by the official plan, and staff requests permission to process this application.
So the public, that's a pretty small public access point, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a narrow trail. It's not a boat launch, a municipally maintained access point. This is just a road allowance that the public have used over the years and created a trail down to the lake. And there are 5 or 6 small vessels that are stored there for water activities.
And that won't change because that's a road allowance, right?
That's correct. So the portion where the trail is located or the access point is located, we will be keeping. They're just requesting to purchase a portion of it, not the portion where the trail is.
Okay. Okay. And they're here today?
Pardon me?
Oh, I say the applicants are here today in person.
Yes,
I
my
believe, yeah, in
understanding is
person.
Mr. Axmit's in attendance.
Yeah. Okay, is there any, pretty straightforward, I think. There's, so if anybody's using that, they have to park on the road, right?
Yeah. Correct. There is a small, it looks like, I think there's one parking space right beside the guardrail that's been used over the years.
Was that Angaluzzi's property? Okay. I dealt with him at the lumber store for years. Okay, okay, so guess we have a resolution then.
Be it resolved that council approves for processing an application by Mr. and Mrs. Axmet to purchase the original road allowance between concessions 1 and 2 and lot 24 and a portion of short road allowance in front of the property in part lot 19 concession 5 in the geographic township of Havelock. The shed located on the original road allowance shall be removed or brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw. Septic system located on the road allowance shall be inspected prior to the notice being circulated. These lands are declared surplus.
Did I hear you say Havelock there?
That's what the resolution says. Is that incorrect? It is. I'll update it. 1 sec.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me read it properly. We're not going to give it away in Havelock.
Be in trouble if we do.
Yeah, I know. So that resolution, but it's the geographic township of Dysart.
Okay. Are people trespassing on your property that go down the road allowance? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, good. All right. Mover and seconder. Walt and Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Do you want to take a 10-minute break?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we're just gonna pass this report then, are we?
Yeah, there's no Dan today.
Well, okay, so you want to have the resolution then? We've all read.
Sure.
Their calls are significantly increased, like month for month,
Yeah.
year over year, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll read it. Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the fire department report for May 2024.
Mover and seconder, Nancy and Tammy, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Parks and Recreation. Who's doing that? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
I think the first two reports are Andy's, but he's just coming in now, so.
Okay.
Or first three, rather.
You're up, Andrew.
Good morning. Just a parks summary on the things we've been working on the past month. Park staff have installed a new privy in Head Lake Park. It's just to the east of the playground. As you can see in some of the pictures there that I shared with the report, it looks pretty good. Also part of the ISIP grant, the park staff have installed a rain garden down at Rotary Beach. The purpose of the rain garden was to control the stormwater coming off the parking lot during heavy rainfalls. And so far it's worked great.
You
we
really
also
think
plan-
those trees are gonna live there?
Yes, once they take root, they'll live there.
'Cause
Just getting them to
well,
take
I
root.
think willows are the only thing that'll live there, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, also and fruit trees have been planted. Also some deer resistant plants and stuff like that. Very, very low maintenance plants. Also a nice grant, fencing for the tennis courts will be installed this week to replace the bent posts and put up all new fencing. And in the arena, ice is being made for summer hockey and it will be ready for next week. With the hot and humid temperatures, park staff have been working long hours to get the ice made.
I suspect that's not in the cost of summer ice either.
Yep.
Okay. That's it, Andrew?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I guess we're not. No, I guess Andrea's got a report too, does she?
I'll read I'll read the resolution for that report. So, be resolved that the Parks and Recreation update for June 25th, 2024 be received as information.
Mover and seconder. Carmen and Walt, all in favor? Carried. Okay. So is there more parks report or Andrea?
So the next report, I don't know if Andy wants to take this one, but it's the results of the supply and delivery of fuel and furnace oil. Do you want to take that one, Andy?
Yes, I can take that one. Just let me pull that one. Yep. For the furnace oil and fuel tender, we had 3 vendors submit their bids for this tender, while Upper Canada Fuel and Burner was the lowest bidder. Their closest yard is in Peterborough, and they mostly service Southern Ontario. McEwen was the second lowest bidder and has a local yard in Minden, which would allow them to better service the municipality.
Not much difference in price either.
No.
Okay. Any questions on those? Okay, resolution?
Okay, be it resolved that council receives and acknowledges this report concerning the results of the request for tender number 2024-REC-03, being intended to supply and deliver fuel and furnace oil to various locations, and that further that council award the tender to McEwen.
Mover and seconder. Carm and Walt, all in favor? Carried. Okay, propane.
For the propane,
Geez, that's an awful difference there. Holy snap.
yes. An awful difference in the prices between vendors. Yeah, we had like five
I hate to
vendors
say that
submit
I've
for
got
the
the
bids
cube
for
at
this
my
year.
place. I'm getting ripped off.
Yeah, I think it's the amount of liters we buy that make a big difference.
How long is that tender for?
4 years.
Okay, and that's based on, that tender can change, can it, based on,
On the rack price.
yeah. Same with the gas.
Correct.
Right. So who did you give that one to?
Parkland was rewarded
Yeah, okay,
is the lowest bidder again.
okay. I don't know them. Anyway, resolution, please.
Be it resolved that council receives and acknowledges this report concerning the results of the request for tender 2024-REC-12, being intended to supply and deliver propane to various locations throughout the municipality of Desert et al. Further, that council award the tender to Parkland.
Okay, mover and seconder. Pat and Barry, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Okay, where's Peter McCluskey? Historical panels on Eagle Lake Beach.
All right, so the historical panels that you see attached to this report have been created in consultation with the Eagle Lake Women's Society and the Dysart Cultural Resources Committee. They have been approved and are being recommended by the Cultural Resources Committee for approval by council. And just to let you know, the Eagle Lake Women's Society have also approved them. The kiosk is already installed at Eagle Lake Beach, as seen in the picture below. And they're hoping that these panels can be approved and installed in time for the July 20th celebration that they're having in Eagle Lake as a part of this whole project.
So that's $1,500, somebody said?
It's out of the $1,500 is out of the Cultural Resources Committee budget. That was approved a while back. That was brought forward to council. And then the remaining funds for this will be from the Eagle Lake Women's Society.
Okay, Walt?
They've requested if we could help out a little bit more with the ladies in the Eagle Lakes Ladies Society. So I know that I'd be in support of if we could help out a bit more. They sure have done a lot of hard work over the years, and it's been they're very, very proud of what they've accomplished. So I really think it would be great if we could do that.
What do you think, $1,000?
Yeah, and just anything. Yeah, $1,000. I think it'd be great. They bake like 700 or 800 pies and quilts and on and on. They're nonstop organizing, and so that's my request. Thank you.
Yeah. We agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's my ward, but yeah, they do. The hours they spend, they're at the door of the Eagle Lake store there selling tickets, and then every time you buy, and very pleasant to deal with and nice to talk to. And
okay, so resolution, then we need to add that.
Robert, do you want the resolution to include where that $1,000 would come from? Or do you want to just say for the council directs that $1,000 be donated to the project? Or how would you, what's best for you?
Well, should come out of the park fund, I'd say.
So, if I may, we do have some funds in our events budget.
Okay.
So we can allocate $1,000 towards the project.
Okay. Whatever we got money.
All right, so I'm going to read it the way that, so be it resolved, the council approves the Eagle Lake historical panels as presented for installation in the kiosk at Eagle Lake Beach. And further, that council directs that $1,000 be donated to the project out of the events budget.
Okay, mover and seconder, Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay, ski mazing.
Yes, so this report, you'll see ski mazing and as well as Lakeside Baptist Church. I had to think there for a second. So ski mazing, this was brought forward. They were hoping to have an event at Halliburton Lake Beach on June 29th, as well as a few days of a camp, 3 Fridays in July. The information about that is outlined in the letter that Craig Boker submitted, explaining how that works. He has been in contact with the president of the Halliburton Lake Cottagers Association, and has made sure that there won't be any impact on the swimming lessons that are taking place. They will board the boat at the lake, at the beach, but then they will actually go out into the water, into the lake before setting up for the lessons or the parasailing or whatever they're doing. So they're not actually taking off from the beach area. So that's all explained in his letter. And then Lakeside Baptist Church submitted a request to use the band shell a couple of Sunday evenings. They're thinking once in July, once in August, once in September, or something along those lines, to do an evening of music. In their letter, they had requested a date in July, which conflicts with the Arts and Crafts Festival. But I'm confident that staff can work with them to find an alternative date where there's no other events going on that could work.
Are they in Head Lake Park or are they in Rotary?
They'd be at the band shell. Both of these applicants have submitted park use agreements. Lakeside had put in for an hour and a half, but in their attached letter, it said they would gladly support paying the fees to use the band shell if need be. Because I did let them know that there would be fees being approved at today's council meeting.
Okay. Resolution then?
Okay, be it resolved that council approves the request for ski mazing, water sports school and parasailing to use the Halliburton Lake Public Beach for a customer appreciation event on Saturday, June 29th, and the following 3 Fridays, July 5th, 12th, and 19th. And be it resolved that council approves Lakeside Baptist Church request to use the band shell a couple of Sunday evenings this summer for an evening of music.
Okay, mover and seconder. Pat and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay.
This is my last one. We've received, council has received a request from Lori Jones at the Rails End Gallery and Art Center to waive the fees, the Head Lake Park rental fees for the upcoming Arts and Crafts Festival. She has attached a letter with the council request outlining the reasons for her request for this fee waiver.
So the request is denied then?
The bylaw wasn't in place when they made their plans and they previously never had to pay any of the park user agreements. So, everything was scheduled and the people have got their booths and they've got all their plans and their budget was kind of set. And then council last month decided that we are going to implement a fee. So hasn't been budgeted into the cost of running their event. So we felt it was reasonable to grant this, to request it this year, and then they can move forward next year if they're going to have to pay those fees, because they are not for profit. And it does attract thousands of people to town.
Yeah. Well, need some discussion.
What kind of fees we looking at again? Sorry.
$500.
$500.
How many vendors, anybody know?
About 100.
Sorry, what was that? 100?
I think. I don't know. Will everybody speak at once?
It's $5 a piece. Same as that.
Yeah. And that's for 3 days, like $5 for 3 days.
But they remove all their own garbage and they have always got their own porta potties and stuff as well.
Was there some discussion about the porta potties that they're using our washroom instead of the
Well,
porta.
we've asked for extended hours, but they still have to have porta potties.
Well, I don't know. Hard one.
Well, and again, like last month, we just all of a sudden decided that there's going to be these fees and who they apply to. So
So.
their festival was already well planned and
So if their framework's already set up for this year, can we warn them maybe next year?
That
That,
perhaps.
that $5 is, I think that would be. I know it's, again, it's $5, my own opinion again, but.
per vendor, exactly. It's just, and it's big, it's the same as the farmer's market at that point. Except they are not for profit. They do a lot in the community.
No, there's no question.
They're a big economic driver.
Well,
Sorry, what do you mean they're not for profit? I thought this is a for-profit sale for the vendors. Is it not?
I believe that Rails End gets a percentage. And that helps fund their building maintenance. I mean, they're our biggest grant that we give every year. And that's going to have to they're going to have to request more and more because the building is older and older and is requiring more maintenance and upkeep. So it's 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other.
The vendor pays $365 to the Rails End Gallery.
That, then we substitute 50,000 or something like that a year for that, so it's really 85,000, so it, even though they're charging the vendors, that still goes into the township.
Yeah.
Coffers. My own opinion is next year, we just let them know that there's $5 to make it even. In the same note, that's again, it's not a penalty for them, but on the same note, it maintains everything, especially if we're doing bathrooms and stuff like that, but anyway, it's my opinion.
everybody. Well, as long as they know that, so they don't come back next year. Okay. Resolution then?
So is this, to waive?
The waive for this year with the
Waive,
understanding that it's
Next year.
gonna be applied next year.
So it's for the resolutions to waive it for 2024 and staff can communicate that they will be charged next year. I'll put that in the minutes. Okay, so be it resolved that council approves the request to waive the Head Lake Park rental fees by the Rails End Gallery and Art Center for the 2024 Arts and Craft Festival.
Andrea had a comment there, I think she wanted to make.
I just have a question for clarification when I communicate back to Lori. From what I'm gathering, it sounds like instead of charging the flat rate fee of $250 per day next year, you're looking at $5 per vendor. Is that correct?
No, or were you guys just doing a calculation of what it would work out to with their vendor count for this year?
I think the fee for next year will be dependent on the number of vendors and stuff they have, and then we would try to keep it even with what other individual vendors are paying. But
The only issue with that is that we'll have to pass a fee bylaw specifically for this organization, so it's up to council. I would encourage council to move away from stuff like that and make a fee. Or we're gonna have a fee bylaw that just names every single organization that uses the park and their special fee. So it's probably better to charge them whatever everyone else, unless we do a big event fee or something, and then we decide what qualifies as that, but. Hopefully I'm making sense. You need a line item for each thing in a fee bylaw, and a fee bylaw requires a bunch of noticing and so on and so on. So we just have to make sure that we're not adding to our fee bylaw constantly with specific fees for every event going forward.
So for today, can we waive the fees for this year's event and then we will have conversation or
Yeah,
consultation with them
that's a good idea.
prior to next year's event?
When do they normally get together to discuss this? Fees moving forward for next year's event?
As soon as we make some sort of decision, then we would communicate that to them.
Okay.
But this is just for this year's event.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is in a month.
So I've read the resolution to waive it for this year, and I just need the mover and seconder.
Nancy and Pat, all in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. And I think we're good to go here now. So we'll move on to building and bylaw.
Good morning, council. So we'll start with the building permit activity report for May. You'll notice that the numbers are quite a bit lower for May than we typically see, especially with construction value. We haven't been seeing the, multi-million-dollar cottages go up this year. We've been, seeing just smaller projects, which seems to be the trend this year. Speaking with some contractors, rather than, booking jobs 1-2 years out, they're don't have any projects this year. So I'm not sure what's going on, if it's a combination of the high interest rates and the capital gains tax that takes effect today. What that's going to do to our local economy with regards to building and construction. Permit fees, revenue, that's also down because of the number of permits, and the complexity of the permits was lower in May. Average inspections, daily inspections are up because there's a lot of permits still in the queue from previous months and previous years. Any questions with regards to the permit report?
No, it's I think it's a sign of the times with the interest rates. Things turn around here. Okay, resolution then?
Be it resolved that council receive the May 2024 building permit activity report as information.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Pat, all in favor, carried. Septic, Bree and Carl.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so this report is to report on our first month of the 2024 program for part 1 of area 5 for the septic maintenance program. As you guys know, we did reduce our number of inspections this year just to kind of help with allowing the industry to catch up with all of the backlog of repairs and replacements that are required from previous years. So we completed about 62 inspections in the month of May. And I included the report that shows the number of infractions and stuff that were listed. So far, nothing too crazy, but nothing out of expectation. And then this year, new to us is the lake health assessment, which is where we're just kind of providing educational grades to property owners on how their lake health is being upheld with regards to expectations of naturalized shorelines and things like that. And most of our properties so far have been ranking over an 80% grade. So that's definitely good to see. People are definitely, they're on the right track with how they're maintaining their properties. Any questions?
That program's moving pretty well, I think. Are the tile beds and stuff, are we catching up on that now? Anybody?
Yeah, I think we are. A lot of tank replacements and stuff like that are getting done, and yeah, I would definitely say we're catching up.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I think we're almost done issuing all the orders for the Halliburton Lake area, and then we're going to move on to issuing the orders for non-compliance from the reports we've been sending out for our largest area, which is the area we did last year. So that's going to probably trigger a lot of septic work as well.
What area is that, Carl?
That'll be the areas of Cache, Drag.
Yeah, Grass Lake and Cache.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Have a resolution then?
Yeah. Be it resolved that council receives the May 2024 septic maintenance inspection program update as information.
Okay, mover and seconder. Walt and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next is the appointment of Abigail. And then
Yeah.
Nancy declared an interest in this resolution. Just have it recorded.
Yep.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, as you see here, it's the bylaw to appoint our newest municipal law enforcement officer, Abigail Roberts. It's fairly straightforward.
Okay, and that's good news. You badly needed, Haley, for you.
Absolutely.
I just would like to point out that we're getting quite a proliferation of signs on trees and on posts and everywhere.
Yes.
And I wonder when Abigail's out and about, if she just take them down, if she can.
Absolutely. I mean, I was trying to do that when I was on my own for a while. There, if you look in the back of my car, there's about 20 signs in there, and I had a whole bunch that I threw out just before that. So we are working on pulling as many signs as we can. We're running into some issues where they're twice my height in the air and nailed in. So that is something that we are aware of the increase in signs, and we're looking to make sure they get removed if they're not permitted.
It's kind of unfair. Somebody comes in and sticks up a bunch of signs and takes it's visual pollution, and it's taking work away from people that are already here. They're trying to employ.
Absolutely.
So it's not a good scene. So the more we work on that, that's great when you get time.
I have a quick question.
I'll read the resolution to appoint Abby.
I have one
Walt
question,
has a
sorry.
question here.
Just quick question,
Okay.
Haley, could you give us a quick update on Wigamog, please?
Well, why don't we do that on the next item? Because Nancy just declared, so we'll clean up this.
Okay, not a
And then Haley's got her update report next, and she'll give that to you in a second. Is that okay? So I'll just read the resolution to appoint Abby first. So be it resolved that bylaw 2024-58 being a bylaw to appoint a municipal law enforcement officer, Abigail Roberts, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too.
Okay, mover and seconder. Barry and Walt, all in favor? Gary.
Perfect. So now we can move on.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yep, moving on to the bylaw update. We'll start with Wigamog up top. We went by last week just to confirm security. Everything seems to still be locked up tight. The species at risk assessment should be concluding in June, so within the next week. My understanding is there's a particular type of bat that they're looking for. If that's not found, then should be ready to go next month. If they do find evidence of that type of bat, then we have to continue on with that information and continue to assess from there. So
Who's looking for the bat?
I believe it's a private contractor. Third party Pynchon Environmental has been hired.
And who's paying for that?
That would be the property owner.
Oh, good. Well, that's good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now that my curiosity is satisfied.
Yeah. In regards to other bylaw update, we're still seeing the increase that we've been seeing. So final numbers for May matched the top intake that we've seen in the existence of this report. So it was a 22 complaint intake. The only other time we've seen that matched was August of last year. So that's August is generally our peak month, and now we're seeing those numbers in May. So I'm very happy to have Abby joining me. I've also added our planning requests, not included as a complaint intake, but we are actively doing work for the planning department in terms of minor variances and purchases of shore road allowance, because we go out there and do the photos for them. So I've just added that to our tracker, just kind of showing everything we're up to. And yeah, we don't have final numbers for June yet, but we've already surpassed our highest numbers for June.
I don't know that you can handle all that.
We got it.
If the planning people are already out there, can they not deal with some of that?
They're not out there. They're doing the paperwork here, and then we go out there to get eyes on the site and take pictures for them. So that's just why I included that, because in March we had 10 for them. Typically we have 5 or 6, but there are some months where we are getting many complaints.
I
And
suspect that their workload's gonna go down too, so maybe they can share a little bit of that. We'll talk to Jeff and them when they get a little later on. But I do know the planning issues will go down when the minor variances go down and the building permits go down, and it all, everything ties together. Okay, so, is that all your report, Haley, or have you got anything?
that's everything, unless anybody has any questions.
Oh, okay, resolution.
Be it resolved that council accepts the bylaw update report for May 22nd to June 18th, 2024 as information.
Mover and seconder. Pat and Carm, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, Public Works. Okay. Okay, is Dave there? Rob's there. Road status report. There's Dave. Okay, Dave.
Good morning, council. Road status report for May 2024. So we have construction ongoing for Percy Lake Road. Miller paving, single surface treatment program completed June 10th. We had a washout on Calico Road on the weekend. So we're currently obtaining repair quotations right now. Removal of fallen trees with the heavy rains and winds that we did have. Cold patch is ongoing where required, and sweeping operations was completed on June 20th.
That's good. That's the earliest for that. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions? Or, okay, resolution then, Mallory?
Be it resolved that council receives this report outlining road maintenance activities for March 2020. Is March correct? That's not correct, it's May. Okay, one
May.
second. Sorry, the resolution says March. I'm just gonna correct it. Okay, for May 2024 as information.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carry. Okay, Municipal Waste Association Promotion and Education Award.
Good morning. This report is for informational purposes, and it has already been widely reported by our local media. But in May of this year, the Municipal Waste Association presented Dysart with a Gold Promotion Education Award for campaign. This was for our Recycling is Easy campaign that encouraged the proper recycling of food and beverage cartons that we conducted back in 2023. The other award winners in that category were the City of Peterborough, which received a bronze award, and Dufferin County, which received a silver award. And we just wanted to let council aware of our promotional education efforts have been recognized in the province.
That's a pretty good competition you were against, so that's good. Okay. Resolution then, Mallory?
Be it resolved that council received this report for informational purposes about the Municipal Waste Association's 2024 Promotion and Education Awards.
Mover and seconder. Nancy and Carm, all in favor? Carry. Okay. The Great Halliburton Clothing Swap.
Yeah, so this is a new initiative. On Saturday, September 28th, Dysart, in partnership with Fleming College, will host the Great Halliburton Clothing Swap. It will take place at the Halliburton School of Art and Design. At that event, people will be able to drop off clean and gently used clothing and accessories like shoes, bags, and hats on Friday, September 27th from 2 to 4, and then on Saturday, September 28th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then on Saturday, September 28th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., anyone will be able to go to that location and pick up at no cost any of the clean and gently used clothing that has been dropped off. Clothing would be available on a first come, first served basis, obviously while supplies last. If there was any clothing remaining at the end of the event, our textile recycler has been scheduled to pick up all that material at the end of the day to recycle it. Working in partnership with Fleming College, this is a great initiative to encourage reuse in the circular economy. And even though we have our purple textile recycling bins at all 5 of our landfill sites, there is still a fair amount of textiles in the garbage. And so this is another opportunity to encourage people to recycle and reuse as much as possible.
We'll see how that works. Might be quite a few people taking there now at the cost of clothing. Resolution.
Be it resolved that council receive this report for informational purposes about Dysart's new waste diversion event, the Great Halberton Clothing Swap.
Mover and seconder. Nancy and Tammy, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Okay, blue box, eligible sources.
All right, this report is a bit of a doozy, so I'm going to show you a PowerPoint presentation that I'll bring up on your screen. You should see it here. It's about blue box non-eligible sources.
You're good to go.
All right. So in 2021, Ontario, the provincial government passed Ontario Regulation 391/21 Blue Box. And that regulation has 3 main goals: to expand the blue box to other eligible communities, to standardize the list of acceptable materials in the blue box, and to make the producers of paper products, packaging, and packaging-like products financially and operationally responsible for the residential blue box program. Dysart transitioned on January 1st of this year. Transition continues for other municipalities until the end of December 31st, 2025. And officially, the whole new program officially starts January 1st, 2026, which we call post-transition. Circular Materials is the producer responsibility organization, or PRO, that represents the vast majority of the producers. And Circular Materials therefore gets to create the rules of the common collection system that comply with the regulation. So they aren't creating regulations, Circular Materials, they are responding to the regulation that is in place. Just to remind council about the transition period, the regulation requires Circular Materials to operate the same number of blue box drop-off locations as there are garbage drop-off locations. The regulation only applies to residential or eligible sources of blue box materials, and commercial and organizational blue box materials are not eligible in this regulation. They're not considered eligible sources of blue box. Circular Materials issued a depot operations agreement outlining our requirements, and Dysart Council executed that agreement in October of 2023. Just some highlights of what that agreement is. Circular Materials arranges for and funds the hauling of blue box materials. Circular Materials arranges for and funds the processing of blue box materials. So the hauling and processing is covered by Circular Materials. Circular Materials reimburses Dysart for blue box related operational costs and promotion education, but you receive during transition a financial penalty for co-mingling non-eligible sources of blue box materials with our eligible sources. Post-transition, starting in January 1st, 2026, we anticipate Circular Materials will either extend the current terms of the agreement or issue a brand new agreement, with them continuing to arrange for the hauling and processing of blue box materials from eligible sources. They will also continue to reimburse us for blue box related operational costs and promotion and education. Regarding non-eligible sources for blue box materials, starting January 1st, 2026, non-eligible sources of blue box materials cannot be placed in the same bins as eligible source blue box materials, and they cannot be picked up in the same load as eligible sources of blue box materials. And this is a direction from Circular Materials in response to the regulation, because the regulation is very clearly just for residential or eligible sources. Just in terms of what the regulation defines as being a non-eligible source for blue box material, it would be commercial properties, municipal buildings like the town hall, arena, and library, places of worship, nonprofit organizations, daycares, campgrounds and trailer parks, commercial farms, and industrial properties. They are all deemed to be non-eligible sources of blue box materials. So Dysart needs to figure out, first of all, how much non-eligible sources of blue box materials do we actually manage in our system? And we've done some different kind of investigations using MPAC, a field study, and a survey of our businesses in the county. Regarding MPAC, if we look at the property codes within MPAC, 3.75% of the properties would fall under the non-eligible source property type. So 3.75% of our total 10,360 properties would be deemed non-eligible. In 2022, in the fall, we conducted a field study at Haliburton and West Guildford landfills. Those studies lasted for 4 weeks, and it was to investigate kind of where the sources of blue box materials were coming from and the tonnage. So when people arrived on site of those two locations, we were asking them if they were residential or a business or organization, and we were tracking that information. What we learned in that situation is Haliburton, for example, had 3.33% of their vehicles dropping off recycling were from non-eligible sources, which is kind of in keeping with the MPAC data. At West Guildford landfill, it was considerably less. 1.46% of the vehicles dropping off recycling were from non-eligible sources. We did collect the non-eligible source blue box materials separately, so we had separate tonnage for that information. What we learned is that while not many properties are dropping off blue box materials from non-eligible sources, the weight of their material is a bit higher. So at Haliburton, 6.08% of the total blue box materials that we collected during the field study were from non-eligible sources. And at West Guildford landfill, 7.73% of the blue box materials we collected were from non-eligible sources. And that makes sense because a house would likely generate less blue box materials than a business, which maybe has many employees working within it. So just taking a look at our blue box tonnages over the past few years, we looked at it if we just use 3.75% as the low number and 7.73%. So we have a range of 44.36 metric tons to 91.45 metric tons of blue box materials from non-eligible sources per year. So in the grand scheme of things, a small percentage of blue box materials that would be deemed non-eligible as per the reg and would need to be collected separately. In terms of the operating costs, we've broken it out again on 44.36 metric tons or 91.45 metric tons. So the total cost for hauling and processing that quantity of material would range between $20,776 and $42,828. Again, these are estimations based on the tonnage and also taking some adjustments for price escalations that have likely happened since that time. In 2022, the 4 lower tier municipalities also conducted a survey of local businesses just to get a sense of what their waste management practices were. And the survey was shared by the BIA and the Chamber of Commerce. Just some high-level results from that survey. 94% of the respondents did have a recycling program in place. And over 70% have a recycling program that was for staff only. And then about 30% had a recycling program that was available to both staff and the public. We asked those businesses how many bags of recycling do they estimate they produce in a single week, 7 days. And you can see the spread is quite varied between 1 bag up to 8 bags or more. We also asked those businesses what they do with their recycling, and the vast majority of them, 69%, indicated they took them to their nearest landfill or waste transfer station. And when we asked how often they dropped off their recycling, the #1 answer was definitely once a week. And we did ask what private haulers were collecting recycling. There was a wide range. Interestingly, a lot of the people responding to the survey didn't know who was collecting the recycling if they had arranged for private recycling pickup at their business location. So ultimately, what council will need to decide is, do we offer blue box drop-off services to non-eligible sources starting in 2026? And the follow-up questions to that is, at what site or sites? We would need additional bays and bins to collect that material, which would require additional capital costs. We would need to arrange for a request for tenders for the hauling and processing. And would that be something Dysart does alone, or with in partnership with the other lower tier municipalities in Haliburton, or even outlying municipalities in other counties or jurisdictions? And how is that blue box program for non-eligible sources funded? Is it done through the user pay system, so the commercial properties dropping off recycling would pay for it, or would the tax base absorb the cost of running that recycling program? If Dysart Council were to decide not to offer blue box drop-offs to non-eligible sources, those non-eligible sources, remember, businesses, commercial properties, daycares, nonprofit organizations, they would need to make their own arrangements for the hauling and processing of blue box materials. We would also want to ensure that the blue box materials don't end up in the garbage, because that would result in higher hauling and disposal costs to us as the municipality to get recycling in the garbage. And there are opportunities perhaps for the Chamber of Commerce, BIA, the Home Builders Association. Maybe they could manage a collection and hauling contract for their members for blue box materials. This is obviously a big topic. It's a bit of a challenging one. I did want to point out that the 4 lower tier municipalities, the staff wrote a letter to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks at the beginning of this year. We advocated that the regulation be amended to not make a distinction between eligible and non-eligible sources of blue box materials. The ministry staff did ask some clarifying questions, which we responded to. In some jurisdictions outside of Haliburton County, councils have made resolutions recommending that the regulation be amended, but we haven't really seen any traction on this, and we suspect that come 2026, this is something that we will need to be ready and be prepared for. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, but in the there's a council resolution that's basically making a recommendation that we do a request for information to see what haulers or processors would even be able to handle that small quantity of material. Should we need to process or to manage these materials?
John, quick question. How are you coming up with your tonnages in your report here?
So for the tonnages, we are taking the annual tonnages, we've averaged it out over the past few years, and then we've given you a spread using the 3.75% impact data, and then the high of the field study that was done at West Guildford Landfill, which is 7.76% of the tonnage was from non-eligible sources.
Okay. John, has there been, I know there's a letter you mentioned here at the very end about municipalities wanting to no distinction between eligible and non-eligible sources. Have they ever put together a request for a mandate for manufacturers to generate more recyclable or environmentally friendly products that are the non-eligible ones should be restricted? So I don't know how, again, we went over this a couple times, how people in rural areas are supposed to make several trips to, you know, sort of the milk cartons and yogurt containers to make this all work. It's fine in the city environment where they've got, you know, localized pickup and higher densities, but in rural communities, this is with no offense, a waste of time. You ask me, but anyway.
So just as a point of clarification, this non-eligible sources does not apply to residential materials. It applies to the blue box materials coming from the commercial sector, businesses and industrial situations. And the regulation, for whatever reason, doesn't include them. It treats a pop can from a home differently than a pop can from a business. In provincial regulation, municipalities have never had an obligation to provide recycling services to the commercial sector, and it's something municipalities have done through their own tax base in many places and over a long amount of time, but there is actually no legislative requirement for us to be in that service to that sector.
You put a number to what you think that might be in our area? You know, if you're saying you measured tonnage at the start by, I'm assuming tonnage hauled out, and your averages you've been talking about, can you put a dollar figure as to what it's really going to cost us to implement that? Can you do that?
Yeah, so that the report indicates those prices using the spread of the tonnage of 40 tons to 90 tons. It's around $20,000 to $42,000 that we would anticipate would be the cost to haul and process the blue box materials from commercial sources or non-eligible sources.
Okay.
Go ahead, Pat.
No, I'm good for now. Yeah, it's
So John.
pretty foggy.
My question is, so our recycling here from the municipality in that bin right there is not, doesn't qualify to go.
So starting in
Our recycling
2026, it would not qualify. That is correct.
So how do they know who throws what in there?
So what would happen essentially is any vehicle, if Dysart Council were to agree that we collect non-eligible source blue box materials, any vehicle entering the site, we would need to ask, is this residential or is it from a commercial location or town hall? If it was from a commercial location or town hall, they would be directed to a separate bin to drop off their recycling. And I recognize it is seems silly, but this is the way we have to respond to a piece of regulation that the provincial government passed. And we're trying to be in advance of having to be ready for 2026 when this comes into play.
Do we have to, Rob, or is there a penalty? Or are we gonna get all of our licenses revoked, or what's gonna happen if we don't comply with it?
Well, at that point, John and I have had that discussion, and ultimately it's going to be CMO that would be doing the investigation on us, and they may just stop servicing us.
CMO.
Circular Materials.
How much clout do they have? I don't know.
They run the blue box system. They're in charge.
Okay, so if we can't do any blue box and they shut us down, does it just go in the bins and go out like the commercial stuff now?
If Circular Materials were to stop collecting at our sites, Circular Materials would be obligated under the regulation to open 5 sites within our jurisdiction at other locations, but they would not accept non-eligible sources. And it would mean our residents would drive one place to drop off their garbage and a different place to drop off their blue box.
So is that at the cost of the group you just talked about?
That would be at their cost, yes.
I think we got our answer. That's discouraging for sure.
It is, it's complicated. So you said if there was commingling, that we'd have to pay.
So if during the transition period, we can continue to commingle eligible, which is residential, and non-eligible sources of blue box materials. So we're doing that. We're all good. We take a financial penalty. Come 2026, we cannot commingle. There's no financial penalty in that situation. It is, you cannot do it. Or maybe they fine us, or they get into a contract dispute with us around our provision of services under the contract which Dysart Council has signed. I think really the path forward is to get a sense of, are there haulers and processors available to handle a relatively small quantity of material? Where would be the nearest receiving facility for those items? Do we centralize blue box for commercial entities in one site? I recognize it's problematic for some of our remote locations, but maybe we need to move to a different collection system at our sites for commercial using front end bins or totes or something different, just because the quantity of material is much smaller than what we deal with on the residential side.
So John, I got a quick question. What's going to happen? Like garbage, for example, they pick my dumpster up. I can put whatever I want. They don't care. I could throw a tire in it. It doesn't matter. They don't care what goes in it. So what's going to stop everybody next year if they have to pay for McKeck's garbage, our garbage, just get a dumpster and have garbage come take it once a month and it doesn't matter what's in it? What happened? Why can they do that now?
So commercial recycling is quite challenging. The regulation around commercial recycling hasn't been updated in nearly 25 years. And the kind of threshold, the size of those facilities are pretty gigantic and don't really apply to any businesses in Haliburton County. When we did that commercial survey of our local businesses, we found that most didn't even know that there are actually regulations in place mandating commercial recycling, because our building sizes are too small to kind of warrant the regulation to apply to them. Come 2026, if you have private garbage collection and you put your recycling into your garbage bin, that is definitely something in your business's purview. However, the response from the public may not be a desirable outcome there. And really, it's just up to business owners to decide how they would want to manage that material that they have within their operations as garbage or recycling.
It's a mess, isn't it?
It's definitely a challenging file. For municipalities that have curbside collection, where maybe they have a store on the bottom and an apartment on the top, they can now only collect from the apartment come 2026. They can't collect from the store underneath. So it's a very new world that we're entering into, but we are responding to the regulation that was presented to us back in 2021. And we know that this is happening. So we just want to be ahead of the game and do our due diligence and research so council can make an informed decision.
Rob, to me, my own opinion, if we can use everything in the council's power to make this as streamlined and as easy and common sense as we can. Otherwise, we're going to just find garbage on the side of the road because people aren't going to drive from Harcourt to Haliburton dump to drop off a container that doesn't fit in the slot. And that goes the same with commercial drivers picking up stuff. They don't have a multi-bin trash truck that's going to have 15 compartments in it. It doesn't make any sense. So to me, in my own mind, let's, we'll leave, for me anyways, leave it to you to keep it as streamlined, as common sense as we can. And simple.
So are we leaning, I mean, we don't have to make the decision today, but are we leaning towards accommodating the commercial recycling at one or more sites, and we can kind of do some deep diving into that?
I think we need to look at everything, but that's.
So every commercial entity, including the high school and everybody else, will have to, the hospital, extended cares, everybody.
No.
What?
Sorry. Schools are eligible sources of blue box materials under the regulation. Non-profit long-term care facilities or municipally run long-term care facilities are eligible. Private long-term care facilities are not eligible. So there are distinctions even between.
To figure this out.
But
yeah.
But daycares, I don't know how they're different than why they're different.
I just keeping us busy.
How many jobs they creating?
Well,
just a reminder that we did not write the regulation.
Yeah.
We are just responding to.
And you think it's stupid too. Is there any benefit to making a resolution to have that regulation be amended? I mean, is that the more that happens, then perhaps.
There's been a lot of resolutions like that and no response, basically, right, John? Am I incorrect on that?
No, that's correct. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of councils have done resolutions, but it hasn't seemed to change the minister's mind.
The other thing that local councils struggle with, and we will too, is if you make recycling hard, it's going to be in your garbage. So we're just going to be paying more to haul more garbage out. That all the recycling is just hidden in there, right? So if you start saying you have to go to you need to go all these sites to recycle, people aren't going to, they're just gonna put it in their garbage. So yeah, so that's something that council will have to balance too.
Is this something, I don't want to keep pushing this down the line, but 2026, you said, John, this is coming?
Yeah, so it starts January 1st, 2026. So the recommendation in the resolution, I think, is to do a request for information just to get some general pricing around hauling and processing so we can get a council more accurate number. And that could feed into our 2025, 2026 budget deliberation. So we have a better sense of what we need come 2026 so we could operationalize this if necessary.
John, in my own mind, I'm thinking we should maybe push this back a year. I don't want to get caught, I guess, in a vacuum if this goes through, but there's got to be an ocean where other townships are seeing this the same way we are. And I can't believe there wouldn't be a backlash or an adjustment of what the regulation of what you're talking about, because it's totally impractical. So again, in terms of spending a bunch of money now on something that I'm hoping doesn't come down the pipe, I don't know if that's a wise decision, but I think we're a year ahead of ourselves, but in a way.
Well, we wouldn't be spending money right now. We're just doing the kind of the back end work. So we'd issue like an RAI just to see what's out there and what's available. We wouldn't actually be potentially spending money until 2026.
Well, I guess we go ahead and do what you were going to do and report back.
Do you want me to read the resolution?
Yes.
Be it resolved that council receive for information the report about non-eligible sources of blue box materials starting January 1st, 2026. And further, that council directs staff to prepare a request for information to determine what vendors could potentially haul and process non-eligible sources of blue box materials starting January 1st, 2026.
Okay. Mover and seconder. Carmen, Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Okay. On to the next one. That's simple too.
We're excited to present to council for its to see the potential redesign of Haliburton landfill into a full transfer station. I'm going to share my screen and walk you through the potential overview of what the site could look like should council decide that this is the correct approach for us. So if you're seeing my screen now, I'm just going to highlight here at the very bottom is Industrial Park Road. So this is where site users currently are driving up. And this entrance here is the current entrance into Haliburton landfill. So what we are proposing, first of all, is to move the entrance further along Industrial Park Road. So it's closer to kind of the top of the road, if you will. And then site users would turn right to access the site. Immediately upon entry, there would be a site attendant in a kiosk who could assess kind of some loads to determine what people are dropping off and whether they could proceed directly to the public drop-off area or if they would need to go to the scale house. If the user was going directly to the public drop-off area, they would simply drive along the road up to a new public drop-off area. This is not at the top of the landfill. This is kind of in the existing area where the blue box drop-off is at the moment. At this location, there would be a lot of bins. We would have bins for eligible sources of blue box materials, for containers, papers, and also some additional bins for cardboard. And then we would also have 4 compacting bins for garbage to help save capacity. These would obviously be built on poured concrete to make sure that the bins have great stability and are not getting stuck in the mud. And the retaining walls would be built at a sufficient height so that users would be able to easily access the bins from the top and not have to reach really high up overhead. There would also be a kiosk here for the landfill attendants so they could supervise that drop-off area as well. And then the public who are leaving would simply follow the road back out and leave the site. if a user had material that they needed to pay or to be weighed to attend, they would drive over to the scale house and their vehicle would be weighed. They would be then directed to the appropriate bins to drop off their materials. We would have additional bins here for scrap metal, yard waste, some additional bins we've also set aside, thinking ahead of non-eligible sources for Blue Box, so having the drop off for the commercial sector there. Once those users who had dropped off materials that needed to be paid, they would then head back over the scale. There'd be stop lights there to help direct traffic. And then they would make the payment based on the tonnage that they had dropped off. So the difference in the weight would indicate how much they would pay. We would have some drop-off locations for some other materials as well, such as our electronic waste, propane tanks, propane cylinders. Existing on site is a metal shed close to the current entrance. We're proposing that we would fence off that area and a nonprofit would be engaged to run a reuse shed there. And that would be fenced off and kind of kept separate from the rest of the site. So its hours could operate slightly different if necessary than the rest of the site. So we'd still have that entrance available to us, but it would be fenced off. In this plan that we're presenting to you, construction and demolition waste would be accepted at Halliburton Landfill and would become the one location to drop off construction and demolition waste in Dysart, keeping in mind that most people are not dropping off construction and demolition waste every week. Contractors build into their pricing to drop it off at a location, so they would work that into their work plans. Currently, there is a large metal building, our maintenance building, where the backhoe is stored overnight. The plan is in this iteration is that that building would be torn down. It currently sits on a concrete pad. And so users would empty their construction and demolition waste onto the concrete pad. And then a backhoe would be used to push that material directly into a trailer that would be waiting below. And then once that trailer were full, the trailer could be pulled away to be weighed and then taken away to be processed. Obviously, in this plan, because it would become the main focus for the entire municipality, Halliburton Landfill would likely become open 7 days a week. And as a result, West Guildford Landfill could be open maybe less days because less residential vehicles and construction demolition waste materials would be going to that location. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and just in the report, we do talk about construction and demolition waste, recognizing that it is one of the largest waste streams that we manage as the municipality. Last year, 54% of all the waste that we managed in Dysart was actually construction and demolition waste. There is, again, no legislative requirement for a municipality to manage construction and demolition waste. It's the service that we have chosen to provide. Another thing that council could consider is actually moving construction and demolition waste exclusively to West Guildford Landfill. And then that site would become the one location for construction and demolition waste material. And that way it would be targeted to one site, kind of keep out of the way of out of the town. It would maybe be open 5 days a week to receive construction and demolition waste materials. The scale house would be there. The scale system would be there. And Halliburton Landfill would be able to receive residential materials still 7 days a week, but we could maybe speed up the line a bit by taking out that construction and demolition waste component from what is essentially the flagship site in our assets that we have. The report talks about some of the other changes that would likely happen, including making sure that all buildings would obviously require electricity and internet connection, as we'd be potentially doing payments. And potentially, instead of using porta potties for the staff there, maybe we install a septic system or something comparable. So there's a lot of information here. Obviously, this is a first iteration for council to take a look at. But the recommendation in the resolution is that we would present this design to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks for their review. And the construction, if this was the iteration to proceed, would take place over potentially 3 years, with the first phase being the public drop-off area. So moving the garbage bins down, putting all the recycling together, making sure the retaining walls are the proper height to improve accessibility. That would be the scope of the work taking place in 2025.
Any idea how many men you'd have in that Halliburton site in your first proposal?
So at Halliburton Landfill, we currently have 3. We would likely need to increase that slightly to maybe 5, just based on the scale house and having additional kiosk staff to kind of direct traffic. That's kind of a guess at this moment.
In 7 days.
It would eventually, I would suspect it eventually reach 5, especially if you're running 7 days a week.
Only at the construction.
If the construction waste was not at the Halliburton site.
Yeah.
That would take away probably a position and move it to West Guilford.
Yeah.
It'd probably take away 2. You'd need somebody at the scales too, wouldn't you? I don't know. I don't know. It sounds like a very expensive proposition.
Yep.
And we're gonna need 2 trailers when we pull the one out. Or more.
Yeah, typically with construction demolition waste, when they're pulling out a trailer, they're bringing an empty one in. So it'd be kind of constant rotation of those trucks entering and leaving the site.
But John, in a busy week, how many trailers would we need?
At Halliburton Landfill, currently we are doing 2 to 3 trailers a week in the summertime. With West Guilford, they're usually 1 every other week, thereabouts. So we're probably looking at, with becoming the one site for construction and demolition waste, you're probably looking at 4 or 5 trailers at least a week going out of construction and demolition waste.
But what happens if 6 trailers loads come in that week? What do we do?
We usually with our hauler, we're able to arrange to just on-call pickup of having them come and take it away. Obviously, consolidating all the construction demolition waste to one location would be different for our operations. So we would work with that vendor to make sure we're able to adequately get the material out on time, so we're not stockpiling it.
John, you made mention of Guilford being a receptor for the construction demolition waste, so that would reduce us to just one set of scales at Guilford, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Well, there's no concrete pad at West Guilford, so you'd have to do a pad there. And I think
Correct,
the
yeah.
pad in Halliburton with that building is not nearly big enough.
Correct.
So we got a problem there too.
Yeah, we have concerns with the C&D at Halliburton for sure, as presented. But say you got to start somewhere. I don't know where else you put it on site at Halliburton. Potentially West Guilford is the better site. It has a larger footprint.
Has there been any cost associations to this first draft or no?
There has not been. When I've looked at what's been happening at some of our neighboring municipalities with their transfer stations, such as Algonquin Highlands and Midden Hills, they are in the $1.5 to $2 million range, recognizing that they were building on new land that was not previously landfilled on. Halliburton landfill, as council is aware, most of that entire site is got garbage underneath it. So anything we build is going to need to be engineered to deal with the shifting ground of the land of garbage underneath it.
So relative to the other landfills, or is this twice the size or 3 times or same size?
It would be the biggest, I would say, out of the 3. Maple Lake and Algonquin Highlands, their transfer station is complete, but they would be smaller compared to West Scotch Line and Midden Hills. Is a very robust plan that they're working on. But again, they're working on relatively flat land that was clear cut to make way for those locations. We will be building on top of a landfill, including the slope of a landfill.
So twice the size then, you think?
At least twice the size, yeah.
So 4 to 6 million then, at the high end.
That's what I'd say.
And we did purchase that chunk of land in West Guilford, right? So we could possibly, would the scales say, or stuff, infrastructure there, be able to go on that land that's not got garbage underneath it? Is that possible in that site? For C&D? Yeah.
We'd have to talk to the ministry about that. The land that we purchased adjacent to West Guildford landfill was for the buffer zone. So I don't know if we'd be allowed to kind of go up to the edge essentially with an operations of a transfer station. That would be a question we need to talk with our ministry rep about, just to confirm what would be permitted beyond the initial border of the West Guildford landfill.
Like, we're not talking about doubling or tripling our garbage, are we? Tonnage?
No, we are talking about just managing the waste we currently have within our system in a better, more accessible way for the public.
So I know this is just at the beginning talking about this, but you're talking spending $4 to $6 million on this project. Do you really think it's needed to be the way that that's designed there?
I do think the public drop-off area needs to be vastly improved. As council is aware, we had a retaining wall collapse at the garbage area at Haliburton landfill last week. It happened when the site was closed to the public, and partially that is because of frost in the ground, but also it's built on top of garbage, and there's not a secure base there. So it will take some engineering, some concrete, to make sure that the area we build for the public drop off is accessible, so that we can reduce complaints around reaching the heights of the bins, and also to make it so the bins are easy to pick up in a sawtooth, which will increase our operational efficiencies at the site.
I know this is just preliminary talk, but I know one thing: I would not be in favor of spending $4 to $6 million. I think we could come up with another plan that is maybe not as good as this one, but something that would really work. And that's like, we're talking a lot of money here. Like that's big dollars.
Yeah, we recognize it is an expensive ask, potentially. I mean, we don't have costing yet. I think we also have to keep in mind that this is an asset that is not going away, and we're trying to plan for the future, right? How can we make Haliburton landfill last 30 years into the future so that the public can continue to drop off garbage, recycling, organics, yard waste, scrap metal, electronics, tires, and have a really good experience and get through the site as quickly as possible, and keep vehicles moving in and out.
Ron, the site redesign is to accommodate the scale house, right? Which council does want scales put into this site. So some reconfigurations needed in order to have that happening. Scales are great because you actually know what's being dropped off, and you're charging appropriately too, which helps. It's a great thing that we should have. But obviously you can't just throw it in the way it's laid out now. It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So.
And we feel that also by moving the entrance further up Industrial Park Road, it gives us kind of more queuing space within the site, so that people aren't automatically trying to turn a corner and hitting the existing landfill attendants. So there's a bit more space to get vehicles in safely, so we're not backed up onto the road as much as we can be sometimes.
So through you, Mayor, I know we're not at the costing stage yet. If this is something council is receptive to, I mean, we can certainly start to cost this out. It is not going to be cheap, I can tell you that right now. But if you want to try it, kind of run something at the same time, if council had a figure in mind that we could reverse engineer. So if you wanted to spend $1 million, I mean, we could show you what that would look like, but until we had something to kind of run with, we can't really try that route.
Again, just echoing what Mallory said, the kickoff to this was our C&D costs and weigh and all that stuff and everything else. So I, again, echo Barry's comment there. I'd really like to hear from the MOE in regards to the probability of putting the scales in Guildford on solid ground on that note. And I got a number of $500,000 to $1 million should knock this off between scales and even more bins or revamping. I don't think we need to get into heavy engineering and soil stabilization on a landfill that's never going to quit moving. On that note, there's a lot of ways you can handle that cheaper in that aspect, but you know, evidently whether we evolve to incineration or not, we still need a collection point at both places on that note. So we do need a revamp of the Halliburton landfill, but I think a more efficient way to look at that whole thing is to look at again, what the MOE says about the I'd push that idea about putting the scales in C&D in Guilford, my own opinion.
Yeah, I don't see that as being a big stumbling point, in all honesty. You know, changing Guilford over to C&D. So the 500,000 to 1 million, is that for the Halliburton site, or is that what you had in mind?
In my own
And then
mind, Rob, it should be
and then additional
collectively-
cost for Guilford?
I think it should be for both, my own opinion. Like scales in a building, you should be pushing 300,000 to 400,000, depending on how much site work you need to do. In terms of land clearing, you're not clearing acres. It would be a, you know, in and out site, whether we're buying bins or not. And to me, a $500,000 revamp of Halliburton, to me, is a lot of money to do that as well. Again, this is me shooting from the hip. So, anyway.
That's a thought. We could start by pricing West Guilford to move the construction waste there.
If it's the area that's offered, you're not really doing that other than transporting that.
Is someone talking right now? Just staff can't hear.
Okay, so we move ahead then by costings, if we can move on new ground on West Guilford. But you'll need the ministry to say that we can locate in that, or at least give us an opinion, John, right?
So
Yep,
question-
that's right.
Yeah.
So what are we actually asking him to do? The reconfiguration of the Halliburton site without the C&D and the scales to give us a rough cost on that
Yeah.
as well?
And do
And
both.
then move the scales and C&D to West Guilford. Because I'm not sure what all he was supposed to do for us.
Are we okay with that, or do we understand what we're doing?
John, can you hear us?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking for is for us to for council to direct staff to submit the Halliburton landfill transfer redesign minus the scale system minus the construction demolition waste drop off to the ministry for review, and further that council direct staff to check with the ministry about using the adjacent land to West Guilford landfill for a scale system for C&D.
Yeah.
John, the latter should be the first. I don't know if we should alter anything at all until we get a word back from the ministry. Otherwise, there's not much sense in changing much.
I think we could submit at the same time.
So, sorry, so do we want staff are directed to investigate the cost of having a scale house and C&D collection at West Guilford, or does it need to go to the ministry?
I get the sense that council is interested in the land adjacent to West Guilford landfill. So that would require ministry to, if we can even use that land for that purpose.
Correct. I think that should be our starting point.
And
then put a hold on anything else until we get that answer.
And just like they're showing you a design today, do you want them to come back with the design before they go out to costing in case you don't like the design?
The ministry says it's a green light, then sure. I think that's fair.
Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to, yeah, so I'm gonna
I would
read
just
something.
direct to come back with a design on the Halliburton taking out the C&D and the scales and with West Guilford with the scales and C&D. But just a design at this stage for council.
Okay.
we want to hear what the ministry supports a set of
Yes.
scales at the landfill first. And then to me, if they do, then we're gonna put it, then we'd expect a design to come back and costing for that at the Guilford landfill. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep, sure does.
Okay, I'm just typing stuff, so, So, I'm gonna read something. We'll see how it sounds. Be it resolved that council receive this report for informational purposes about the potential redesign of Halliburton landfill. And further that staff are directed to consult with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks about having scales and C&D collection at the West Guilford landfill. And further that staff are directed to bring back a redesign of the Halliburton landfill with the scale house and C&D collection removed. How does that sound?
Sounds good, Mallory, but I got one quick question.
Okay.
So the West Guilford site would not be C and D only? It would be both, or are you talking C and D only?
C&D
at West
only, I
Guilford?
think.
That'll work though.
Yeah, in this iteration, I would envision it being C&D only. And that the users who typically drop off garbage and recycling there would be directed to Halliburton, which would be open 7 days a week.
How much more is it just to keep the bins like we have there as a transfer station as well? The tenants are already there. Can we not still keep X amount of bins there for? It's really, Guilford's a pretty busy spot, you know.
I agree. I wondered if you're chatting with, it raises a good question. We could talk to the MOE about running combined, just the way it is now, but with that new property we have there to put the scales in that end of it. And redirect the traffic in through the scales side and then modify. I don't even know if you got to modify the landfill at all. It seems like it's great now, my own opinion, but. Clear that up, Mallory.
You guys still want to have you want to have all collection at West Guilford. I guess maybe staff will talk to the ministry first, see what's kind of possible maybe and report back to you guys. Does that work?
Yeah.
See what's, so do I need to amend the resolution or is it okay the way it was read?
So long since we've heard it, we need to hear it again,
Do you want me to read it again?
please.
Okay, be it resolved that council receive this report for informational purposes about the potential redesign of the Halliburton landfill. And further that staff are directed to consult with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks about having scales and C&D collection at West Guilford landfill. And further that staff are directed to bring back a redesign of the Halliburton landfill with the scale house and C&D collection removed.
I think that captures it. That good?
They say we can't have this C&D in Guilford, then why revamp Halliburton first? Okay.
Okay, I think that's good. Got a mover and seconder. Pat and Carm, all in favor? We're moving now. Okay. Thank you, John. That's a good start. Now we're tired right out. Anyway, that's pretty complicated stuff for sure. Okay, finance, Barb.
Yes, good afternoon. So the first report we have here is the check summary report for May. Total disbursements were $1,315,666. And that is broken out with vendor payments of $1,055,419 and payroll for a total of $260,241.
Barbara, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but at the county, we get a check listing. Is that just something you can push a button and provide it with? I'll tell you the problem. First of all, counselors may have a conflict here. because they've sold something and they don't even see what month it's on the agenda.
That's been something we've been recommended by the ministry for over a decade now, not to be putting on the agenda because it's already approved by that point, but I think Barbara's made it available if staff have questions about something, they can go in and, or counselors,
Well,
they can go in and speak to her as
you
well.
think the county would have been told that, wouldn't you?
They do know that. But there's been different people over the years. that
But
may
I'm
have-
just afraid that, we're gonna get a counselor here who doesn't know his stuff's been on and we passed it and he voted for it. Because he couldn't see it. He didn't know it was on that month.
Well, these are all budgeted items, so if there was a,
It doesn't matter if it's budget
Yeah.
or not, if it's not declared.
well, I think they may, I guess at that point, if they were aware of something, they could
Yeah, I
speak
know
with
you
Barbara.
pointed out to it,
Oh,
but you may not be aware because it might be under another.
Yeah.
Parks might have picked up a load or something somewhere, and I just don't want somebody to get caught here when they shouldn't, that's all. Besides, in the past, I've seen stuff where somebody favors some supplier and everything gets bought from the same place without even getting prices.
Well, we do have the ministry coming in July to do an overview of all
Okay.
that stuff, and finance will be part of it, so if you'd like to ask that question, you can.
Anyway, I mean, I can come in and go over them. It's not a big deal, or anybody can, but I just think we should have. Okay, okay, resolution then, Mallory?
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the May 2024 check summary.
Okay, mover and seconder. Nancy and Walt, all in favor? Carried. Okay, bylaw.
Yes, so the next report is a bylaw for the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as the federal gas tax. So this bylaw here is authorizing the agreement for the next 10 years. So it will commence April 1st of 2024 and run to March 31st of 2034.
We don't know how much that is, do we?
So for 2024, the allocation to the municipality is $225,803.
Okay. Spend it all in one place. Okay, okay, so that goes through for 10 years then.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, everybody okay? Resolution.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-63, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a municipal funding agreement for the transfer of Canada Community Building Funds with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto.
Okay, mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Administration.
So the next report here is just to pass the our updated fee bylaw. So this one incorporates the Head Lake Park rental fee for organizations and community groups. So it's just $250 per day for rentals that go over for 2 hours and over, and the band shell rental fee for $100 per day for rentals that go for 2 hours and over. And the bylaw notes that the playground's excluded and local service clubs are exempted.
Well, that's the resolution.
Yeah, do you want me to read the resolution?
Oh, no, not if that's what's in it. Mover and seconder, Barry and Carm, or Pat.
I didn't actually read it, but I'll take that. Barry, Carm. So be it resolved that bylaw 2024-57 being bylaw to impose fees and charges be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto.
Okay, we got the mover and seconder, all in favor?
We got.
Okay. Toll Bridge, Lions.
Yeah, so this is the annual request we get every year from the Lions Club to just set up for their toll bridge. They always provide us liability insurance, and then they make sure that they're wearing safety vests and just to be safe during the event.
Okay. That's this weekend, isn't it?
August 3rd, actually.
August, or 1st August. Okay, mover and seconder. Barry and Walt, all in favor?
Do you want me to read it?
Oh, heck, I'm
Okay.
half asleep here.
It's okay. Be it resolved that council authorizes the Halliburton and District Lions Club to hold their annual toll bridge on Saturday, August 3rd, 2024, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the vicinity of the bridge on Maple Avenue between Victoria Street and York Street with the following conditions. One, that the Lion Club will obtain liability insurance, naming the municipality of Dysart as additionally insured, and provide a copy of their certificate of insurance prior to the event, and that all volunteers working in the traffic lane shall wear approved safety vests. And then we already got the mover and seconder.
Yeah, Barry and Walt. Okay. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're ready for planning again. Okay. I guess, well, he's read these, so we'll go ahead here. We're way behind.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's going to do the first one?
That's for me. So this is for the bylaw that we heard this morning for the lands of Hatton and Jorgensen, and the recommendation was to approve the bylaw as provided. There was no public comments or any concerns from council.
We dealt with that this morning, so resolution, Mallory?
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted. Yep.
You guys can't read lips? I'll go again, 1 second. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-59 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2005-120 for the lands of Hatton and Jorgensen, which consists of part lot 23 and 24, concession 9, and further described as parts 2 and 3, plan 19R-7388 in the geographic township of Harcourt, municipality of Dysart et al., which would change the zone of the subject property from rural type 1 zone and environmental protection zone to rural type 1-14 exception zone and environmental protection zone. Be read a first, second, and third time, signed, passed, and the corporate seal attached thereto.
Okay, mover and seconder. Tammy and Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Next.
Yes, thank you. This item is a road closing bylaw and deeming bylaw related to an application to purchase the shore road allowance in front of the property of Jeffrey on Canisius Lake. The notice requirements are complete and we've received no concerns. Subject to any questions from council staff, recommend approval of the bylaws.
Pretty straightforward, I think. Okay, resolution, Mallory?
Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-38 being a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the original shore road allowance in front of part lot 8, concession 1 in the geographic township of Havelock, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signing the corporate seal attached thereto. And further be it resolved that bylaw 2024-39, which is a bylaw to deem lot 30 registered plan 381 in the township of Havelock, not to be within a plan of subdivision, for the purpose of section 50, subsection 3 of the Planning Act, as amended, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signing the corporate seal attached thereto. This bylaw is intended to allow lot 30 on plan 381 to merge with the shore road allowance, which has been closed and conveyed pursuant to bylaw 2024-38.
Okay, well, we just passed the one we talked about this morning before you came. Okay, mover and seconder here. Carmen Berry, all in favor? Carried. Next.
This is another road closing application in front of the lands of Lewick on Canisius Lake. The notice and circulation requirements have been completed for this application as well, and we've received no specific concerns. Subject to any questions from council, staff recommend approval of these bylaws as well.
Any questions? Okay, resolution?
Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-60, being a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the original shore road allowance in front of part lot 7, concession 3 in the geographic township of Havelock, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto. And further be it resolved that bylaw 2024-61, which is a bylaw to deem Lot 48 registered plan 479 in the township of Havelock, not to be within a plan of subdivision for the purpose of section 50, subsection 3 of the Planning Act as amended, be read a first, second, third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto. This bylaw is intended to allow Lot 49 on registered plan 479 to merge with the shore road allowance, which has been closed and conveyed pursuant to bylaw 2024-60.
Mover and seconder. Walt and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next.
This item is a new road closing application by Miss McPhee, who owns a property on Grace Lake that is bisected by an original road allowance. Excuse me. So this application intends to resolve encroachment issues related to existing structures located on those road allowances. The development of these structures are quite old and occurred between 1939 and 1968. Therefore, the locations of most of these buildings are recognized by the official plan. There is a small shed located at the rear of the property and appears to, according to the survey, encroach onto the road allowance for Grace River Road. So this is a privately maintained portion of road, but we do have a road allowance in this section. The applicants haven't proposed a solution to resolve this encroachment. So I'm looking to maybe some direction from council, whether they want that resolved. Other than that shed, based on the history of development, staff have no concerns with the request. We're just looking for direction in regards to that shed and permission to process this application.
I think we should defer it and get it resolved. It should be resolved.
Yeah, there's options to do that. It is a very old building. It could be moved, or they could make application to purchase a portion of that road allowance. I'm not sure if there's room there. It's something that,
But
yeah,
it is
it's,
on the original road allowance.
pardon me?
Is it on the original road allowance?
No, it's on the road allowance at the rear of the property. It's the road allowance for Grace River Road.
Oh, okay, the township road.
It's a municipally owned road allowance, although it's privately maintained.
Yeah. I don't know. What's everybody think?
How many, do you know how many feet over on it is? I don't see it on the survey, or am I missing it?
If you're reviewing the survey, it's at the back of the property opposite the lake. It doesn't look like a very big building. I'm thinking under 200 square feet, and it only looks like maybe the back fifth of the buildings located on the road allowance, so probably a few feet.
Is that something that we have to deal with, Murray? It looks like they got about 8 feet between the house and the building and the road for snow removal and everything else.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty tight.
Like, I'm thinking if they were asked to purchase that little wee spot or something like that, maybe, I don't know. Be a shame to try and move it. It looks like it's a beautiful old log spot, but anyway.
Well, the problem is if you recognize it being on the road allowance, what do we do the next time we get one? That's the problem I've got with it.
So Jeff, can you purchase a small portion there?
Yeah, it does, as Councillor Casey mentioned, there's not that much room between the road and that structure, but it appears they could purchase a small envelope that might at least move it onto their own property. They would likely require a minor variance for that setback. Another option is a license of occupation agreement. So there's a few options available to them. And to
Since
council.
occupation, Jeff, has to be renewed yearly then? Every 3 years.
That's up to council. Council sets the terms for license of occupation. So there are existing license of occupation agreements for more established structures like buildings that sometimes they just automatically renew until that building no longer exists.
I think that's a better option. At least we retain control of the property. Can we do that? Yeah.
Yep. Do we want to add that into the resolution, Mallory?
Yes.
Are we deferring the processing of the purchase though?
I don't think we need to. Sorry for jumping in. I don't think we need to because they still have to go through the appraisal process. So it might give them some time to go through that application process.
So we still want to approve for processing the application to purchase a portion?
That's my recommendation.
Okay, and further that, what are we directing? That
The applicant apply for a license of occupation agreement pertaining to the shed located on the road allowance for Grace River Road. Perhaps that would be appropriate.
for the shed. Where'd you say it was located? Sorry.
On the road allowance for Grace River Road.
Wow, it's for Grace River Road. Okay. All right, so I've got be it resolved that council approves for processing an application by Patricia McPhee to purchase a portion of the shore road allowance along the shore of Grace Lake in front of Park Lot 1, concessions 1 and 2, and a portion of the original allowance for road between concessions 1 and 2 and Lot 1 in the geographic township of Harcourt. These lands are declared surplus, and further that the applicant apply for a license of occupation agreement for the shed located on the road allowance for Grace River Road. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Okay. And the next one.
Yeah, the purpose of this last report is to delegate to the mayor and clerk the authority to execute license of occupation agreements for short-term rentals located on municipally owned shore road allowances. So the purpose of this is to help implement a streamlined licensing process so that short-term rentals can continue to operate under the new short-term rental bylaw. Attached for council consideration is a license of occupation agreement template that was prepared by the municipal solicitor, as well as a bylaw to delegate authority to the mayor and clerk. The agreement template includes provisions requested by council relating to items such as the term of the license, the fees, or the cost of the application, as well as the annual fees and the amount of liability required, or liability insurance required, sorry. I have included, just for council reference, a license of occupation procedure which will act as a guiding document for the public. This is just something to help them understand the step-by-step process, whether it's a new application, a renewed application, or a application for a short-term rental. Staff recommend approval of the bylaw and subject to any questions council may have.
Okay, any questions? Okay,
Maria, I got one question. I was reading through this and it says that about the insurance, are we sticking with 2 or 5 million?
And if you'd like me to clarify, so as per the report, in the agreement, the liability is set at $2 million as per council direction from the last council meeting. The municipal solicitor has come back and said that $5 million would be more appropriate and recommends that we contact the municipality's insurance broker to find out what they think might be an appropriate value.
if it's a young person or something though, 2 million won't cover it.
No, that's what I was asking. Are we going with 2 or are we going with 5? It doesn't say in here what we're using.
I don't think there's much difference in the price. I don't know.
I just know if we need to make that decision or if we were gonna.
Yeah, we should stick with 5, I believe. That's
Well, we
what
had
I-
it set at 2.
Okay, yeah, it's 2 on there.
Two. Yep. We have it at 2. He's recommending to go to 5.
Yeah.
So is that what we're doing? We're going to 5?
I would think the other townships are 5, so.
I don't know. I was just reading it.
Yeah.
How do we do?
5 million seems to be the going rate these days. It was just through that short-term rental process that council had settled on that 2 million value.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay, Mallory?
Yeah, so Jeff, in your bylaw, it probably mentions two in Schedule A, doesn't it, in the current agreement attachment? So what we can do is pass the bylaw as amended to set liability insurance requirements to 5 million. Does that sound good to council?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll read it the way it's the way I have it written. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-62, being a bylaw to delegate to the mayor and clerk the authority to execute license of occupation agreements for short-term rentals located on shore road allowances. Be read a first, second, and third time, pass, sign the corporate seal attached thereto, as amended to set the liability insurance requirements to 5 million.
Okay, mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Reports, Harcourt Community Hall.
Thank you.
So they had a successful yard sale and they donated money to the 3 public schools for their breakfast.
Okay.
And they've got a wedding coming up and they're gonna do some more meals soon. So
Yeah.
they've got some stuff going on.
Good. West Guilford.
Murray, we're getting all ready for Canada Day. The fireworks are being delivered Wednesday night. We didn't have to bother you for money this year because we paid for them last year, never got to use them. So they're having kids games and everything. It's full deal this year again, I think.
Good.
So sounds like she's a go.
That's good. Glad to hear that. Rails End.
Rails End has had a busy time. They just had a community engaged program. Was called Grounds for Goodness. And it went over a space of, I think, 2 to 3 weeks, and they actually had 712 people participate in it, as well as some groups. Health Services had a group participate. So yeah, it's a very busy place, providing
Bring
lots
a
of
lot of
service.
people into town for sure. Resolution, Mallory?
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the June 2024 Rails and Gallery and Arts Center report.
Mover and seconder, Nancy and Walt, all in favor? Carried. BIA.
Hey, Murray, BIA meetings tonight, so
Okay.
nothing to report there. Same with Harvest Halliburton and nothing to report.
Okay. Source water protection. Same. Upper Trent. Nothing. Well, that was fast. Okay. Minutes and recommendations from the standing committee.
I can read the resolution to accept the glebe minutes if that works.
Yes, that works.
Okay, be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the draft minutes from the May 9th, 2024 Glebe Park and Museum Committee as information.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay.
Report's mine. It's just to say that the committee needs to move their start time, which I assume council's fine with. I'll also be making a few kind of administrative updates to our procedural bylaw while I put this update in. So as part of our procedural bylaw, we need to officially notice before we change it. So that's what this resolution does for us.
What are they changing it to?
So instead of starting at 2 p.m., they're starting at 1.
Boy, that's earth shattering. Okay.
Yeah.
Resolution, please.
So be it resolved that council accepts the Glebe Park and Museum Committee recommendation to change the meeting start time for the Glebe Park and Museum Committee from 2 p.m. to 1 p.m. And further that council, as per section 22 of the procedural bylaw, gives official notice of the proposed amendment so that the bylaw may be brought forward for adoption at the July 23rd, 2024 meeting of council.
Mover and seconder. Tammy and Barry, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next.
I can read the resolution for that too.
Sure.
Be it resolved that council acknowledges receipt of the draft minutes from the May 16th, 2024 Cultural Resources Committee as information.
Mover and seconder. Pat and Walt, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, resolution to Gwynn the Coast.
Okay.
Shouldn't be in there long.
So I'm just writing down the time. Be it resolved that council adjourn its regular meeting at 12:46 p.m. to discuss matters pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended pertaining to a proposed disposition of land in the township of Dudley, which is a road allowance disposition.
Mover and seconder. Ward 2, Nancy and Tammy, all in favor? Carried. Are we shut down?
Okay, so this is confirming, be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-64, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting held on June 25th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto.
All in favor? Carried. Anything else before the adjournment?
Okay, be it resolved that council adjourn its regular meeting held on June 25th, 2024 at 12:54 PM.
Carried, all in favor? Carried.
Perfect.